We're going to get started now. Good morning, everyone. This is the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills number 150162, 150163, 150164, and resolution 150179. Ms. Lewis, please read the titles of the bills and resolution.
Bill number 150162, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2016 through 2021 inclusive. Bill number 150163, an ordinance to adopt the fiscal year 2016 capital budget. Bill number 150164, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2016, and resolution number 150179, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia, covering fiscal years 2016 through 2020, and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2015, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, the Authority, pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this Council, approved by the Mayor on January 3rd, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the Authority.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Today we continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider various bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal 2016 and capital program, and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal 2016 through fiscal 2021. Before we move on with the testimony from the First Judicial District, we have some housekeeping that we had to handle for our budget process. We will be offering an amendment to the capital program and capital budget from a timing perspective to comply with the 30-day window. So at this time, I'll go into the public meeting very briefly so I can offer these 4 amendments to the capital program and capital budget. These amendments are to delay by 1 fiscal year that proposed purchase of new voting machines to provide capital funding to the Free Library of Philadelphia. The first amendment will move from fiscal 2016 to fiscal 2017 and $22 million in proposed capital funding to replace city voting machines. Notwithstanding testimony that was presented to provide the rationale for this expenditure, this councilmanic body has reservations about making such a large expenditure on equipment that is less than 10 years old. This is especially so given the other capital needs of existing municipally owned buildings. This delay will give us the time to consider this capital request more fully. The remaining amendment will restore to the fiscal 2016 budget and program the fiscal 2015 capital appropriation of $2,400,000 to the Free Library of the City of Philadelphia to match a redevelopment authority capital program, also known as RCAP, grant that will launch the 21st Century Libraries Initiative, resulting in the renovation of every library in the neighborhood. The funding will allow for initial construction on 4 branches, providing for handicap accessibility to the facilities, a mix of private and communal spaces that will allow patrons to take full advantage of the Free Library's healthcare, educational, and job search resources, and an improved children's space in newly designed teen areas. The reason why these amendments are being offered at this time is that the city home rule charter spells out the requirements for any changes that are to be made to the capital program. Before council can enact an amendment to the capital program, we must first request through the mayor the recommendation of the City Planning Commission. The commission has 30 days in which to respond with its recommendation, so I want to start the clock running now. And right now, all the members have copies of the amendments? Thank you. At this time, Councilman Jones will offer these amendments. So on my behalf, I will not be requesting a vote on the amendments. My intent is to get these amendments in the record.
Thank you. I offer proposed amendments to bills number 150162 and 150163 and request that a no vote be taken on them at this time. Second.
With no vote. Just offering
no
amendment
vote,
for no vote.
vote.
All right. Flip over. Okay. And we will see the stenographer receives a copy of both amendments so that be made part of the record. And we will now go back into our public hearing. Thank you all very much. Today we will hear testimony from the following city departments: the First Judicial District, the District Attorney, and the Law Department. Please come forward.
Good morning, Council President Clark and members of City Council. I am honored to appear before you as President Judge of the Court of Common Pleas for the 1st Judicial District. I look forward to working with each of you individually and collectively towards the betterment of our courts and the city. I will speak to you briefly on some of the highlights and successes of our court. The 1st Judicial District has had so many successes over the past year that I will just limit my comments to a brief outline. The chair of the Administrative Governing Board and the Administrative Judge for the Trial Division, Judge Kevin Doherty, who oversees our budget, and our other administrative judges, Judge Margaret Murphy, who joins me at the table, and Judge Tarafiella, who sits in the background, will discuss with you in more detail the savings and the contributions of the Court of Common Pleas. The 1st Judicial District continues to strive to be fiscally responsible and create efficiencies in every division of our court. Each of our administrative judges work diligently with their assigned judges to ensure that we are transparent and accountable. While because of time constraints, I cannot highlight every successful venue of the court, I have selected a few to just give you a flavor for the mix of creativity, interest in promoting public safety and justice, and allowing the 1st Judicial District to rise above and beyond expectations and standards. First, the use of video conferencing continues to provide both cost and time savings to the court. Fewer prisoners are transported, child witnesses can feel more comfortable when testifying, and security issues are addressed by this effective tool. Inactive voice response and robocalls notify and remind defendants of court dates and payments. Most courtrooms are paperless, using electronic filing and document management systems in all divisions of our courts. Our case management programs in each division continue to provide swift and efficient resolution of cases. Our Commerce Court focuses on disputes among commercial entities involving judges who specialize in resolving these issues to address companies that conduct businesses in Philadelphia. It also, through the sequestration program, collects back taxes, half of which benefit our public school system. The Residential Mortgage Foreclosure Diversion Program is designed to reduce mortgage foreclosures by connecting the homeowner and the mortgage company. This program provides appropriate counseling and reconciliation conferences and is still growing strong and maintains a national and international reputation. Created by now retired Judge Annette Rizzo and now led by Judge Rosalind Robinson, 5,345 new cases were processed in 2014, and over 6,000 cases were disposed of. We continue to use electronic monitoring to supervise pretrial and post-trial defendants, as well as juvenile delinquents who are using GPS monitoring as an alternative to placement. The 1st Judicial District Mental Health Court continues to thrive. Since its inception in 2009, thousands of cases have been reviewed. Led by me, the President Judge, the 1st Judicial District Mental Health Court provides an alternative to incarceration for offenders with mental illness and co-occurring disorders by preparing them for re-entry into a more effective treatment modalities in supervised community settings. The Mental Health Court aims to reduce jail population and criminal justice costs by balancing justice, treatment, and public safety. It is a re-entry program that provides a unique collaborative approach which combines intensive wraparound services for the individuals that participate. This concludes the collaborative efforts of both the Department of Behavioral Health, the prison, the courts, the Defendants Association, and the District Attorney's Office. This demonstrates the joint commitment of each of our justice partners to protect the interests of public safety while lowering the criminal recidivism rate for individuals with severe mental illness involved with the criminal justice system. There are currently over 300 participants in our program. The mental health court continues to grow, even with fewer resources and higher demand for limited services, housing, and placement. As we become more aware of mental health issues resulting in criminal charges, we must be prepared to meet the demand. It not only saves prison costs, but it reduces crime and saves lives. In juvenile, the Project Start Truancy and collaborative effort to reduce chronic truancy and increase attendance allows court participation by ordering appropriate service to help families. Through service in the community and community outreach efforts, juvenile probation stays connected to the community, sponsoring back-to-school supply drives and the like. The Juvenile Treatment Court, led by Judge Frank Reynolds, celebrated 10 years of having positive impacts for the youth struggling with substance abuse. The Juvenile Human Trafficking Court, called RAP, Courts Working to Restore Adolescents' Power, is a relatively new program, and it's gaining national acclaim in its efforts to service and counsel youth who have been victimized by human trafficking. Led by Judge Lori Dumas, it seeks to provide alternatives to the criminalization of minors of sex trafficking by providing specialized trauma-informed treatment to victims in the least restrictive and most holistic environment, promoting treatment and healing. The domestic relations finds our courts are involved with other agencies in an effort to find delinquent child support data and match it to insurance award settlements. It also partners with other agencies to provide job training and job searches for those obligated for child support payments in an effort to increase child support payments. In order to ensure access to justice, both language and sign interpreters are available for all court proceedings. A newly created Help Center and Family Court assists litigants with forms and processes, providing better access to the court system. Speaking of the Health Center, the Orphans Court is seeking to provide a volunteer guardians assistance program to review and advise guardians and provide training and support. It is hopeful that a position of guardianship investigator will be created to review guardianship annual reports and questionable behavior and non-compliance of guardians. Our probation department remains current as a result of receiving a Bureau of Justice grant to improve supervision techniques and addressing criminogenic needs. They also use evidence-based practices in motivational interviewing. The court is proactive in addressing the needs of the elderly. Armed with the results of the Supreme Court Task Force on the Elderly, the court is actively engaged in exploring the development of an elders court. This is an effort to ensure equal justice and reduce continued victimization due to long delays and inconvenience in the courtroom. So as you can see by these highlights, the 1st Judicial District is on the move. These are just a few examples of the fine work our judges, administrators, and staffs are performing. From children, juveniles, to elders, the 1st Judicial District is poised and prepared to move forward with new, creative, cost-efficient, technology-sound, and inspirational programs for the court. As President Judge, I have reinvigorated the committees of the Board of Judges so that they are more inclusive and diverse, and that they work for the betterment of the court. I have created new committees, including strategic planning and succession, public relations and community affairs, witness intimidation, technology, elder court, women's initiative, and access to justice. This administration is determined to be transparent and accountable while providing access to our courts. We welcome you to join with us as we envision a whole new way of providing justice for all. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information, and I look forward to a strong and productive partnership. I now invite Administrative Judge of the Trial Division and Chair of the Administrative Governing Board, Kevin Doherty, to provide additional information concerning our budget and on the 1st Judicial District. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Council President, members of Council. As you know, I'm Kevin Doherty. I am currently the Administrative Judge of the Trial Division, and I have the good fortune of being the Chair of the Administrative Governing Board. As Chair and as Administrative Judge, I sit here proudly to speak on behalf of all the hardworking, dedicated women and men judges in the City of Philadelphia, as well as the administrators, but most importantly, our staff, that being those members who are comprised of DC 33, which is Local 696, as well as ASME, which we have 47, which is our Local 810 and 2186. Together, the 1st Judicial District is advancing the interests of all Philadelphia children, families, and those who need the services of the court. Our mission, as you know, for the court is to adjudicate cases according to their jurisdiction and to ensure fair, timely, and accessible justice to the citizens and litigants in the city and county of Philadelphia. Today, I'm here to outline how the Philadelphia judiciary contributes to this budget, how we are fiscally responsible as a partner in government, how we achieve efficiencies within our system, and how we provide extraordinary services for our children. We were quite pleased to receive information from the city asking us to take those 3 highlights: fiscal responsibility, achieving efficiencies, investing in our children. First and foremost, I think this council body needs to understand that our fiscal year 2016 budget is $168 million, consisting of $110.3 million for our general fund and $58.3 million for grants and revenues, and it is awaiting your approval. I also must share with you, in large measure, this budget and the monies generated, in fact, it largely is contributed by the court. The FJD generates $51 million that's credited to the general fund from our filing fees, our fines and costs, which approximate $35.8 million, and reimbursements, which approximates $15.9 million. In addition, the FJD saves this city and its agencies nearly $5.5 million annually by waiving the filing fees in the Court of Common Pleas and the municipal court, as well as $3.1 million law library fees. As a consequence of the total of $168 million budget request, the FJD is really only seeking $49.8 million. With regard to fiscal responsibility, I think that pretty much sums up how hardworking. Not only are we a court that is dedicated to servicing the people of Philadelphia and those who use our system, but we're also contributing monetarily back to the system to help generate the ability for us to think forward and move. As our President Judge has indicated, we are a strong, unified judiciary with the best interest of all who enter our system. It is with your good blessings and your approval of our budget, it is the only way we will continue to service those who need the court systems the most. With regard to other efficiencies within the system, I must share with you. We have now the use of video conferencing, which has been proven to be an effective and cost-saving measure. During 2014, the criminal courts conducted 5,503 video conferencing, saving the city an estimated $403,000 in prisoner transportation costs. Instead of bringing them down, we're now able to have arrangement and discussion while the individual is on State Road or elsewhere. We also have initiated our interactive voice response and robocalls, which notify the defendants of upcoming court dates and how we accept payments. That is a service that we're providing so that we will not have unfortunate bench warrants or the misuse of our employees for services or for the retraction of these individuals who may not have received appropriate notice, considering that we know in the city of Philadelphia we are the largest, poorest city in the country. We must take that into consideration, that when we serve our people, we are serving all people. However, when we look at 1 out of every 3 children in our cities, they walk the lines of poverty, 1 out of every 4 adult. We cannot incarcerate nor issue bench warrants for their inability to have the appropriate funds to take transportation to our court system, yet they must appear in our court system to adjudicate their matters efficiently and effectively. With regard to the most important, I must share with you, is the investment in our children. As you know, I have been a staunch advocate for the most at-risk, vulnerable, poor, and working poor, as well as the working children and families that make up our city. And I am proud to share with you that the accomplishments of the Philadelphia Family Court under the administration of Judge Margaret Murphy and under my leadership, we have done very effective and progressive reforms, which really we are investing in our children. For example, and I should give you a highlight. Years ago, we worked collaboratively with various groups, and we created a Sports for Justice initiative. In 2014, we had 290 court youth involved in Sports for Justice programs. We worked with the University of Pennsylvania, the Palmer Group, the U.S. Attorney's Office, our juvenile probation, and the Department of Human Services. In 2014, we were able to introduce our children in court-involved activities with the First Tee Golf, Legacy Tennis, Katie at Bat, Village of Champions, Philadelphia City Rowing, Squash, Youth Star Basketball League. We were able to take our children and introduce them to sports that have not arguably been urban-centric. I can share with you, years ago, I picked an article up out of the Inquirer, and it said, an interesting survey was those children in the urban environment have the same dreams as those children in the suburban environment. While I thought it was meant to be flattering, I found it most insulting. And as a result, we were able to reach out and make sure that our children, with the same dreams, hopes, and ideals, were also able to participate effectively and efficiently in those sports that are not commonly considered quote-unquote urban. Yet, our children have not only engaged, they've aspired and succeeded. And we're very fortunate that we're taking our children from our system and enlightening them with the opportunity to learn teamwork, sportsmanlike conduct, and an understanding of responsibility, not only for themselves, but for others and in the community. Also, we have developed some summer jobs for our youth in our system. Last year, we worked well with the Philadelphia Youth Network, and we worked with Work Ready and DHS, and we had 134 summer jobs for our youth in the juvenile justice program. I think that's fantastic. Too often we read about the failures of our children and the failures of our system, and we do not accentuate or advance the successes of our children and our families. It's wonderful to know that we had 134 children who were alleged to be delinquent, actually worked, made money, and paid taxes. We also have a program with our school district. We work with the Mayor's Office of Grants, the Philadelphia Police Department, the school district, and DHS, and we have a grant-funded program called School Justice Collaboration, keeping kids in school and out of court. The program has diverted 264 students since May 2014 through intervention, conflict resolution, and mediation service. We've had the good fortune and the benefit of working with the leadership of the Philadelphia Police Department. Under the leadership of Commissioner Ramsey and Commissioner Bethel and all of them, Ross, you name it, these officers have worked steadfastly with the Philadelphia Family Court and the First Judicial District to advance the health and welfare of our children by making sure those low-risk individuals who may have been caught up in our system have an opportunity to remove themselves from our system, be rehabilitated, and enter our environment once again as a happy individual able to enjoy their life such as we hope. Lastly, in addition to the strike that, I must also share from another perspective, our Civil Commerce Court has introduced the city's petition to appoint a receiver and sequester to manage abandoned commercial properties against tax liens. And as a result, in the last 18 months, we have obtained over $13.8 million in back taxes. But one of the greatest accomplishments that I find for Philadelphia and our First Judicial District started in the Philadelphia Family Court, and it's my hope and vision to expand it to the adult division. We introduced GPS. As a result of GPS and working with a particular provider, we were able to take our children and place them on an electronic monitoring GPS, which would track them every 5 seconds, as opposed to electronic monitoring, which is an outdated system, which requires a landline in your home. As I indicated, we are a poor city, and many of our families no longer have landlines because they cannot afford it. We do not need those landlines. As a result of our initial investment from DHS, we were able to keep our children from detention as a result of knowing where they are. So not only was it a preventive aspect of juvenile probation, but it was also a dispositional tool in which instead of placing our children, we were able to put them on GPS and place them in the home and know exactly when they were going to school. As a result, or in lieu of paying detention costs at the detention center, which could range anywhere from $300 to $500 a day, we were paying $6.75 for the bracelet. And we have improved the technology. As a result, over the course of some years, I believe the first year we were at 2 years, we saved the city $5.5 million. I believe we're up to $7 million. While I have not requested additional monies in this current budget, it's my hope and desire and my vision to utilize GPS in adult probation. We work hand in glove with our system partners in our prisons. We're all concerned about the length of stay while we have individuals incarcerated. And as a result of those individuals who may not be able to meet the bail requirements as established by statute and rule, we can put them on GPS. So we're looking to save not only detention costs and transportation costs, but it's the right thing to do. The 1st Judicial District is aspiring to seek approximately $1 million from this body for future use, or for working, I should say, collaboratively with you all, so that we can implement this now into our system. Considering the monies that we've saved the city through our innovative programs, I'm hoping that you may be able to invest again, once again with the 1st Judicial District, because I can assure you the return on your investment is not only fiscally responsible, it's socially conscionable, and it must be done. That's my perspective. I'll leave it to you all to sit and discuss it with us. I must also share with you another great accomplishment that the 1st Judicial District can stand above the rest of Pennsylvania, maybe nationally, and that is our partnership with the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office and the Philadelphia Public Defender's Service. As a result of our collaboration, despite the harrowing experience of Luzerne County, which is known as the Kids for Cash, I had a personal experience that I'd like to share. I one time received a phone call from a public defender who indicated that a young African-American woman who had just been accepted to medical school was being denied admission because of quote-unquote misinformation on her application. It was that she indicated she had no record when there was in fact a juvenile record. When we searched our records, we realized the record was expunged. However, based upon the antiquated and prehistoric system that was in place, they destroyed the record. So we had no proof to indicate that this individual, in fact, had a record expunged. That individual, that young lady, was denied an access to medical school. Who knew? Maybe she'd have cured cancer for us. But what it caused me to do was to sit down with our partners, and I must share with you, the District Attorney's Office and the Public Defender's Office, we worked incredibly well. And in the last 2 years, closer to 3 years, we developed a process in which the court has expunged over 7,000 juvenile records. That means 7,000 of our children have an opportunity to succeed without the stigma of an adjudication of delinquency. It's the right thing to do, but it shares with you what can it be accomplished in this city through the court system when you work with major partners such as our District Attorney Seth Williams or Ellen Greenlee, who is our defender. I'm proud of these accomplishments, but this is only the tip of the iceberg. If this council deems us worthy and deems us, based upon our proven track record of additional funding, I can assure you, not only as the administrative judge and as a chair, but as a citizen of this great city, that we would use those funds wisely, efficiently, effectively, and the only people to benefit would be those who need us most. Thank you for this opportunity to address you all, and we're open to any questions should you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. Usually have our props up there, a little late going up. You did mention a couple of things. We, in the council, we have been having this discussion about schools. Pretty much everybody is in this electoral season. And one of the things that we recognize, and you referenced it in your testimony, in particular, Judge Doherty, about the support for juveniles and providing job opportunities for young people. And it's our thought, and when we look at the school district's budget, is that a lot of I say over half of the things that are listed by category are things that other departments or other entities provide support for. The challenge is that there's no coordination between, say, for instance, DHS and all the other things. I got my little props here. We got this. We're going to make sure that you all have copies. The school-based family services, and obviously part of family court, plays an integral role. And I guess what we want to do, and you kind of referenced it in your testimony already, to see if you would be willing to participate in the implementation of this program. To date, we've gotten a lot of positive response. The universities are very interested in participating. Some of the shortages in the school district, as we all know, are counselors, health care, and social services. Clearly, family court can play a role. So we're looking to attempt to integrate these services and, if at all possible, provide a significant amount of these services on site. Our position is that there's a school in every neighborhood, and that should be the focal point of every neighborhood. So wherever possible, if we can have services in that school or in proximity to that school, it will provide a much service delivery model. So after that long statement, I guess my question is, in our understanding that you haven't seen the proposal, would you be willing to entertain possibly providing some services out in some of these neighborhood community schools to support families and children?
Philadelphia Family Court has dedicated itself to making sure that each and every at-risk vulnerable child has an opportunity, or anyone that walks through our system. We have already laid the groundwork, not only with the Department of Human Services, but with the Philadelphia School District, in the development of a memorandum of understanding so that we can share the necessary information with each system partner to effectively and efficiently address the needs of all children. You must also understand, and we're too busy doing, and we don't have enough time sharing or enlightening the public as to what actually occurs in the Philadelphia Family Court. We dedicate ourselves. We work hand in glove with these systems. We're working with them, and the court is not the bastion of last resort. We have created the Prevention Service Unit, in which we are working well with the Department of Human Services. This city is fortunate to have millions of dollars of community-based services. However, the stigma attached means you either have to be arrested or you have to be taken in by DHS before you have access, which is not true. We're doing really well. We've created specialty courts like the crossover court, in which we're taking delinquent youth, and we're trying to get them to services so that we don't have to adjudge them delinquent youth, nor have them penetrate our dependent system. We are doing phenomenally well. Unfortunately, as a lack of sustained funding or monies, we don't have the technology to track the outcomes. But we anecdotally can tell you thousands of children have avoided a adjudication of delinquency. Most people, not only in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, don't realize that if you're 14 years or older and you're a judged delinquent of a felony, you're a convicted felon the rest of your life. As a result, we take your fingerprints, we take your photographs, and we take your DNA and charge you $250. Should you not pay, we can hold you in contempt and create debtor's prison, which we do not do. But also, our prisons are so overcrowded, primarily with people of color, that the system has created a prior record score. The most points one can acquire would be 6 in their life. Stealing a car is 1, selling drugs 2. Fighting in school could be anywhere from 3 to 6. What we've created was a system in which our children are acquiring 6 points headed to State Road, where our prisons are, as opposed to State College, where we would like them to be. So we have worked arduously with all the system holders to make sure that we have a plethora of diversion programs, and making sure that our school district provides not only a free but an appropriate education for our children, whether they're on probation or placed and returned back to Philadelphia. Long answer is, I welcome any opportunity to work with the Philadelphia School District if it's going to advance the education as well as the health and welfare of any child.
Thank
So yes, and I must also defer to the administrative judge of the Family Division, Judge Murphy, and I'm sure she too is a strong proponent of working collaboratively with anybody that is willing to work with us.
Okay, thank you. And the second part of that conversation has centered around where do we send the money? Every year, this council has stepped to the plate, and over the last 4 years, we've appropriated upwards of $375 million in additional annualized funding to the City of Philadelphia School District. And frankly speaking, I can speak for myself, I have no idea where that money goes and what the priorities are with respect to that money. And during the course of the conversation, it increasingly appears that a number of these services that the school district should or would like to provide are actually available in various departments. And the question arose during some earlier testimony, if we were to provide additional money to that department, as an example, community college, and the dual enrollment courses that allows a young person to enroll in the 11th grade, 12th grade, to enroll in college for credits at the same time that they're getting their credits in high school, and they graduate with college credits when they graduate from high school. Some of us, and I can speak for myself, I'd rather send that money to community college and have them run the program as opposed to sending it up to 400 North Broad. I have no idea where it's going. So that's the kind of conversation that we would like to have. If we can, if I have to put additional money, I'd rather put it in a place that I know that it's going to be.
It's a timely conversation. I must share with you, just recently, we're probably into it a year, possibly 2 years, where legislation has changed in which children who had been in our dependent system that left 6 months before their 18th birthday or at 18, if they want to come back into our system, we can accept them in our system. And a condition is that they have some form of education. So we're talking about those individuals in our foster care system that ultimately are put outside, and they're the individuals that become homeless or become incarcerated or drug addicted. We've now created a safety net, and we're hearing those cases, and we're bringing those children, those young adults, back into our system for the purposes of not having them penetrate the dependency system to be placed in foster care, but to assist them and gather the necessary competencies to succeed. A program such as you suggested would require Philadelphia Family Court to be at that seat so that we can make sure that our children in our dependency system, all our children, have the same access to that free education at community college that any other child does. So we would welcome that opportunity. Wherever the money goes is a choice for the legislators. The children and the young adults that come through that system, you must not forget the court-involved kids. Too often, they want to take our children and dismiss them as the bad kids. Our kids are good kids who got caught up in a bad way. If they're bad kids or behaviorally challenged, we'll place them somewhere, but we'll educate them. We'll get them the necessary physical and mental health, and then they're coming back one day to be council president, maybe. So we're there with you.
Yeah, one of these days that there will be a vacancy in that seat. Not this time. Get that pension structured properly. Thank you, Your Honors. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
And for the record, there are no vacancies in that seat.
I said one
On
day.
the record. Thank you. I don't know if it's me, Council President, or every year I'm more encouraged by your testimony since I've been here about progress, sometimes small, sometimes large, in what the courts are doing in a tough job to be able to deal with not the best part of society. Often it's our uglier parts that have to be attended to, but I always get a better feeling that we are moving in the right direction when I hear your testimony, so thank you for that. A couple of things I'm intrigued about. I've heard the long list of, partial list of accomplishments. I would like to spend my time on the questioning, talking about the electronic monitoring and what the potential, highlight those potential savings, and say for the record that each year you come back with a savings, whether it's mental health court, whether it's veterans court, whether it's this or that, and then we don't make the gesture to incentivize that by giving a portion of that back to the administration to be able to further find better ways to deliver services. So we need to at some point do something different with that card. You save $5 million, you should get 20% of that to go and find another $5 million that might reduce costs. But let's just focus on the electronic monitoring and the difference for me between those costs, and then also as we evolve GPS. Can you talk about that?
Sure. We used a pilot in the Philadelphia Juvenile Probation Department. At the time, to place a child at the then Youth Study Center, it cost approximately, I'd say, $500 a day. We worked with this agency, and we were able to develop a GPS system in which I paid $6.75 for the actual bracelet or use of the bracelet. Now, there had to be an advanced monies for the use of the technology and the computer system and the personnel to track. But we track our children every 5 seconds. Not only does it prevent a detention initiative, it also assists in crime prevention generally, because we're able to determine where our children are. It has been used both by prosecution and by defense in cases of allegations of arrest or other criminal conduct. But when you aggregate those monies and you really look at the monies that we're saving, it's doing a phenomenal job, and it's the right thing to do. But from a very practical approach, I must share with you, when we're taking a child and he or she may have been accused of a sexual offense, historically that individual must be detained as a result of not being able to return to the home in which the perpetrator and the victim reside. Truth be told, because of these types of offenses, we are prone not to trust at this point. While there's a presumption of innocence for every individual arrested, we must also take into account community safety. And when someone is charged with such an egregious offense, community safety often trumps. However, with GPS, I could take that young male or that young female, put a GPS, and we could put them in grandmom's house. And I can say that you're only permitted to go to school and come home, and you may go to therapy. And every 5 seconds, I'm tracking you. During the infamous flash mob in Philadelphia, we were able to look at our GPS to determine whether any of those individuals who participated were on our active probation so that we could have swiftly responded. The purposes are plentiful. All it costs is minimal, but it creates an incredible opportunity for vision in any way that we see it appropriate to advance the people and the protection of our community, but also to preserve the freedom and liberty of that individual, unnecessarily keeping them from detention.
So, based on your testimony, for $1.1 million, we get 175 wireless ankle monitors, 175 GPS ankle monitors, and we get an additional 8 tree prowl service personnel, and the return on investment every year is $500,000, so it pays for itself
in 2 years. Absolutely, and that's just calculations. That's not negotiations with these providers or how we can advance or use them. That's the minimum. That would be I guess that could be the ceiling. It depends on how you want to interpret it. That's what we need to start. Ultimately, I'd like to do away with electronic monitoring because we have to depend on landlines, and many of our families are no longer using landlines because we have cell phones. So it's not worth that investment. I'd rather take that money down the line and somehow incorporate it back into complete use of GPS.
So, I'm going to yield my time. I'll go on the next round, but for sure, justice may be blind, but it doggone sure can count.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman O'Brien?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to congratulate Judge Doherty, Judge Woodskipper, and Judge Murphy for their extraordinary creativity in the court system. And I'd love to have a discussion on how we could attach an epidemiology study to the wonderful outcomes that you're achieving and the processes that are unique to your system that can be replicated throughout the rest of the Commonwealth and beyond. But when you talk about the at-risk population, I personally want to congratulate you for your innovative processes, and also thank you for adding the most vulnerable, our guys with disabilities, into that equation, and congratulate you and express my gratitude for the processes that you're exploring to deal with their unique challenges in your system. And I'd also like to thank all three of you for your participation in the Autism Project, which again will project some wonderful innovative processes in the future. And thank you for your enthusiastic and very comprehensive testimony. I wish we could expand upon this and tell this story in a larger audience, but thank you all for your testimony today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Blackwell?
Thank you. I too would like to thank all the wonderful, outstanding judges who are here today and thank them for their work. Do you know if we're any closer to trying to find a place where we can send our youth when they leave about 19 days on the average youth study center so we can keep them here and save money? I know I talked to you before, Jan, and you were saying we're having a hard time trying to find a place who will take our youngsters when they have to serve more time than the 19 days. And I think it's really important. It's something that we have to continue to focus on.
We're engaging in a process right now where we're undertaking, along with DHS and a specific grant, to evaluate the options that we currently have and seek additional resources that may be closer in the vicinity so that our youth would not be traveling so far as such, and to get the services we need. As a result of the transition from Judge Doherty to my administration, along with Supervising Judge Olszewski, we're actually making an effort to visit every one of our placement facilities in the state to try and really evaluate what is it that causes us to choose one, let's say, in Pittsburgh versus one somewhat near Philadelphia. The whole thrust of today's placement is to, one, try and keep the children at home if possible, and two, closer to home if that is feasible. And so the DHS Commissioner is clearly committed with us to research that and undertake that as an initiative of this year.
Thank you, because I'm told that youngsters who are doing so well, when they're pulled out of youth study center, where they're local and where they're cared for, and have to go in the suburbs in a whole nother, or some other state in a whole new environment, then they begin to fail again. And since we look at it and know it, it's such an important thing, and certainly we want to work with the courts however we can.
It's recognized that every transition leaves an impact on the youth. There's no question about that. And so the goal is to not have a series of transitions and a series of restarts, but rather to see whether or not the child can be placed appropriately as close to home as possible. Thank you.
And I thank you. I also like to thank all of you. Whenever I've had individual problems, you know, we call you and you've always been there. Thank you. Thank you, Judge. Lord, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Squilla?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, guys, and thank you for being here. And I, too, want to say that how great it is to see the courts working collaboration with our other departments and how important that is to make progress. And it's also interesting to hear of the money spent, how much actually comes back to the city of Philadelphia, which is so important because not only are the courts necessary, when they are run properly, they become such an asset to our city. And to see what you guys have done and what you're doing and how you're using technology is really, really very encouraging. Piggyback off Councilwoman Blackwell, a concern that we did hear is about people, young people going far away, and some people believe that that would make it harder for them to adjust and their families. So it's great to hear that answer that you just gave Judge Murphy on that. Is there a reason before we did it this time that we would send them out to other locations, or was it just what was ever available?
It was a fact-specific concern. For example, unfortunately, we have no delinquent provider within our city. Under the administration of Madam Justice Richmond, during the Rendell administration, we actually had requests for proposals to try to find or establish detention facilities in this area or throughout southeastern Pennsylvania. And unfortunately, we had a population of young females that were coming into placement, and no one was willing to take part or accept an RFP or even propose the creation of a detention. So much of it is just as a result of what is readily available. But over the course of time, the needs-based budget, which is generated through the state, which requires the monies, whether it's fed or state money, coming into the child welfare juvenile justice system, requires the signature of the administrative judge of the Philadelphia Family Court, as well as that of the commissioner of DHS. Through the course of our administration, we have become more involved with the application of the needs-based budget. And the best way to say it used to be that we were invited to a buffet where we chose what they provided us. Over the course of my administration and Judge Murphy's administration, we're now at the table developing the meal. In essence, we're working with them. Under our watch, under previous Commissioner Anne-Marie Ambrose and myself, we brought all our children from out of other states, and we had 0 kids in detention outside of Pennsylvania. We try to obviously keep them to Philadelphia or our counties before we send them. But we cannot forsake the fact that these institutions, whether it's George Junior Republic Summit Academy, Vision Quest, or close to St. Gabe's, if they fit the needs of the child and we want the child to be placed for a period of time, we want to make sure that despite the travel, that they are provided a holistic way of reformation so that we can get them out quickly, have them return, and be reintegrated into our communities effectively. Part of that problem was the lack of transfer of credits between the host educational facility and our own Philadelphia School District. Again, we've worked with the school district very well, sometimes not very well, to make sure that our children are receiving the necessary credit. So it can't be answered in a single question. That's the purpose of this study, to take all the various dynamics and try to group them into at least categories so that we can effectively match a child who needs to be removed from home to an appropriate facility that primarily close to Philadelphia. Does that make sense, Councilman?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there's a cost associated with that also. I mean, obviously, the closer there is, the less transportation we have.
Absolutely.
And so on. So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, and I thank you for those answers. And I do want to reiterate again how proud we are here in Philadelphia to have a court system that really understands the mentality of the people in the city of Philadelphia, what it means to have kids that are unfortunate enough to have to live on the streets and what they deal with, understanding what is the best way to make them whole and get them back in to be productive citizens. And I know we always hear about the bad things that happen and the bad guys that go away, but there's a lot of good things that happen with the court system also, and I'm just here to thank you for everything you've done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Nielsen.
Wow, I didn't even start yet.
Thank you, Councilman Nielsen.
Thank you all for coming. Justice Doherty, or Judge Doherty, confused again. I want to talk about the GPS monitoring, if we would. We talked about how you save a lot of money during pretrial. Has there any thought on like some of the sentencing? Because I know house arrest can't be fun. And being able, through the GPS monitoring, that you can say, hey, you can go from here to here, point A to point B, and utilize that. And you mentioned in your testimony about prison overcrowding. And for forever, prisons are in here, they're asking for more money to expand on their prisons, and we keep on, instead of educating our kids, we keep on building bigger prisons. Has there been any thought processes or on the actual sentencing people to house arrest, the nonviolent, and the people that are not a menace to the society, they just got tripped up in something, whereas we can save, I mean, you save, $7.5 million is significant. Can you talk about that a little bit for us?
I can share with you, for purposes of the term disposition is a term of art that we use in juvenile court, which really means sentencing on the adult side. So the use of GPS would be a form of sentencing, such as house arrest. We are permitted to have areas of restriction as well as areas that the child is permitted to go.
Meaning, if you have a child who may have committed an offense, and it's an offense such that he or she is being prosecuted, the ultimate result would be that as long as the child is on a GPS, we can have the child go to school, go to treatment, go to an after-care program, or go to some remedial educational facility. We would be able to track that child to make sure she or he is doing as the judge ordered and return. The beauty of this GPS system is that we're able to have two-way dialogue. For example, if Kevin's walking and he's not allowed at 30th and Market, and we see Kevin on 29th and Market walking towards the Schuylkill River, our probation and staff can beep him and say, "You better turn around, Kev, or we're coming for you." On the converse, we did have a great successful story in which one of our youth, while on the GPS, was at home on house restriction when his father had a heart attack. Since he was the only individual there, not only was he trying to resuscitate his dad, but he used the two-way system to contact our people, and we were able to call 911, and that youth's father, his life was saved. So these are the peripheral, the collateral, the anecdotal stories of the true successes of your money investment with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for everything you do for our kids and trying to make them success stories instead of mess stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask about something that was in your testimony. We've noticed that crimes against seniors have increased in recent years, particularly those cowards that would take advantage of their age in ways that were like utility impersonators. In some cases, we heard about Medicaid fraud. In other cases, most recently, there were official-sounding individuals calling seniors saying that you missed jury duty. And because of that, if you don't pay $400, $500 right away, we're going to issue a bench warrant and arrest you. Do you have a senior court that addresses those kinds of criminal activities? And if so, have you seen an uptick in victimization of our seniors?
All right, one of the things I mentioned in my remarks is that we now have a committee that is exploring the development of the elder court program here in the 1st Judicial District. This is an offshot of the Supreme Court had an elder task force on elder abuse, and one of the recommendations was that Philadelphia pilot an elder court. And so what we're doing now is looking at statistics and data to see how many elders are coming into the system. What are some of the issues that involve elders? Are they cross division? So what could be a criminal matter may also be a matter that's in civil court because it involves property, maybe a matter that's in orphans court because it may be a guardianship issue. And so the effort really is to develop an interdivisional program where an elder can come in and have all of those issues addressed at the same time. Now, that's going to take a lot more planning. So we're now looking at some of the low-hanging fruit. Can we identify a particular judge in each program who will look at the elder cases? Can we fast-track elder cases? Because oftentimes, defendants or lawyers try to keep continuing matters in hopes that the elder will die, will develop Alzheimer or dementia so they can't testify. And so the effort will be to give them their day in court while they have the ability to address the issues at hand, to make sure that they have access, are they in a wheelchair? Can we physically get them in and out of the building? Do we have hearing aids available in the court system so that they can hear and understand? Is there a need for any type of interpreter? So these are the kinds of issues that we're looking at with the hopes of presenting a proposal to the Supreme Court to open an elder court here in Philadelphia. So we are aware of the issues. We think that the numbers of elders are increasing, and we need to work promptly to make sure that we're addressing them.
We are encouraging also an awareness campaign. One of the partners, I believe, is the district attorney's office, and we wanted to know about the Be Sure Before You Open the Door campaign to educate seniors about these utility impersonators. We had one case not long ago where a veteran who had knee replacements was taken for a ride, and they made them pay for renter cars. And I mean, that had to be a frightening experience for them. So I'm glad that you and the courts are paying attention to that, from everything from people that are supposed to be guarding them at that age in their life are taking advantage of them financially, and taking their Social Security and other retirement incomes that they may have. So it is good, because as they are, we may well be. And it's good that you're putting these things in place now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Blackwell, Councilwoman, did you have your light on?
I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay. Councilman, you have any more questions? Okay, no, appreciate that. Go ahead.
Domestic violence cases are also on the rise, and Jewel Williams, Sheriff, testified that in 2013 there were 11,000 protection from abuse orders entered in domestic violence cases. 3,500 of those cases involved a weapon. And I know our chairman here pays particular attention to that and has put his money where his, put our money where his mouth is by way of putting extra beds in these shelters. What's going on with these cases, and how are we dealing with gun cases in particular, because they offer the greatest threat in domestic violence cases?
Well, the domestic violence unit continues to operate at the new location, and I have to say that the biggest and best thing that's ever happened to Philadelphia Family Court, other than Judge Doherty, of course, is the fact that we got a new building. And so one of the big issues and motivating reasons that we do have a new building is because the advocates for domestic violence really took exception to the deplorable conditions that we had at 34 South 11th Street, and deplorable would be a kind word. In the new courthouse, the domestic violence unit continues to provide assistance to each person and every person who comes in to file a domestic violence petition. I will say in Philadelphia that we have really 24/7 accessibility, unlike in my understanding other counties, in that we have family court operating on all the business hours, and then we have the emergency site that goes immediately into play as soon as we are closed. In situations where we've had an emergency closing, we've had tremendous cooperation with municipal court under the direction of Judge Neifeld, who has assisted us and immediately opened the emergency site. Thus, we have probably 3 times more filings per capita than any other county in the Commonwealth. With respect to the guns, they are normally required to be surrendered under the terms of the PFA Act as well as under the terms of the PFA orders, which is done through the sheriff's office. Now, mind you, an awful lot of these cases are held in absentia with respect to the defendant. So there's good service, defendant doesn't appear, so you have to indicate in the order that there's alleged to be a gun, alleged to be a weapon of some sort. It can be a kitchen knife oftentimes, and that is to be confiscated. Now, the order has to then be served, and then the person has to actually be apprehended to actually get the gun or whatever. So that's a second step of the process. With respect to the key to our domestic violence filing, we have so many people who have a language impairment, as I like to call it, meaning that they are not fluent in the language. And that has been the motivation for Judge Chen, who has been involved in this statewide process where the interpretation of all the PFA orders is now in so many languages, and the people are given a copy in their native tongue coupled with the English for our police officers who may not be able to speak one of the 58 dialects that someone does. But anyway, I would say that that unit also has benefited from the new building in that when you come in, the 2 main courtrooms in terms of size have been given to the domestic violence area, and they have separate waiting rooms for petitioners and respondents. That's so significant for that population because in the past, it would be the intimidation factor which would cause someone to not continue to proceed on their PFA. So as they would sit in our domestic violence waiting rooms, they would see the respondent across the hallway, across the corridor, who would make a threatening gesture and they would just give it up. And that is not the case anymore. So I think the security also, which has been provided by the sheriffs, and I have to say, it has made family court a different place. Again, they have stepped up. They will assist a person coming into our building, provide security out the door, around the block, and I think on the whole, and I hope that the domestic violence victims feel much safer than they ever did before if they choose to come forward, which they all do not do.
Finally, Mr. Chair, I would ask about the use of technology. I've been around long enough now to remember when we first start banging about it, and I'm hearing paperless courtrooms. Bill Green would be proud at this point, but also the use of teleconferencing by way of hearings. Can you tell us how we've evolved in that regard, and if it's making a difference by way of backlog and actual trial processing?
Could I address that initially? With respect to the new courthouse, and again, I probably sound like either the advertisement for everyone to get one or whatever, but all I can say is if you have lived in a slum long enough and you finally get to the pearly gate, you just can't believe you're still breathing, and it is in heaven. And the reason I say that is because it's clean and it's competent, and you can hear. The question you just asked is so interesting because I've gotten more phone calls from my 29 colleagues of judges sitting on the bench who say, I had a hearing today. We used the conference system. I could actually hear, like it's a miracle. And it is, because if you have equipment that works, it's amazing how you're inclined to use it. And that doesn't mean the person on the dialing side has anything different than a telephone. They call in and it fills the entire courtroom, and the DRTs, who are taking down the recording as opposed to our live court reporters of the past, actually can pick it up as well. So it has been an advantage. In that they now exist almost everywhere, they are being utilized, but they prevent so many hearings happening from interstate areas where we don't even need a video, although we have that capability in some. You just need to have the audio, and you can actually resolve an interstate support case right there in the courtroom.
So I would be interested, I know we're new to the building, but I would be interested in next year's hearings, finding out how it's reduced transportation costs, how it's increased time of processing, and to reduce the backlog that we have for a lot of these hearings, that use of technology. So I know you're new to the spot. Mr. Chairman, we don't have such good news in this building about use of technology.
Any day now.
Yeah, but we wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
I would
Councilman.
just like to extend an invitation formally to any of the members of council or their staff who have not had an opportunity to come over to family court. Let us know when you can come, and we would absolutely love to give you a tour. Many have taken us up on that, and it would be really a delight just to show you around.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Judge Murphy, if I could just add on the domestic violence question, that I've heard from many of the victim advocates just 1,000-fold improvement in the whole system, and particularly with that being able to keep the various individuals separate has been tremendous, because that fear that, and sometimes it's like you say, it's verbal threats that happened, it scared a lot of the victims away. So I think that's just a tremendous improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman O?
Mr. Chairman, good morning. I do have a question, just for my information, regarding translation or persons who don't speak English well. I know that they're court-certified interpreters, translators, and I'm not sure how that's going these days. I know that can sometimes be up or down. Does the court use language line, and is it in all the courts or some of the courts?
Yes.
It
The answer
is.
yes.
It is.
Yes, we use language line. We use language line. We had a committee that created the most used dialects in our court system. We now have posted throughout our courtrooms directories in native tongue so that with English in their native, so even if the person doesn't speak English, they can point and we're able to redirect them. That's for services within the courthouse. For purposes of interpretation within the courtroom, if we don't have a live body in the room, we are able to access language line. Yes, there's been a full front effort.
Okay.
And Judge Chen has taken the charge.
Well,
And I was going to say, as required by the Supreme Court, there is a language access plan that
Okay.
every county has to develop. Philadelphia has really taken the lead in that, you know, we have all languages available. Many of our forms, as Judge Murphy has indicated, have been translated or they're available, and we try to ensure that everyone has full access to the court based on that.
In addition to that, Judge Chen and Janet Fazey Dowd also work together, and they are in a training seminar constantly where they have a group of individuals who are trying to get the certification. They actually bring them together for regular meetings, regular observation, and when they finally achieve the various steps along the way, we celebrate it actually at a luncheon and an event. It's an ongoing measure, and the reason is because we need to have various languages to be able to be interpreted by those with the required certification. So it is an ongoing issue, and if people come in for an interview, such as with a domestic violence case, and we do not have an interpreter available that speaks their particular language, they actually call then the language line, and it is interpreted as contemporaneously. I was having a hearing just the other day where we were going to use the language line because there was not an interpreter available with a certain Hindu dialect, sorry.
Right.
And so we have the availability and the capability now to not turn anybody away and not have to continue it. I mean, I'm sure there'll be occasions, but it should not happen often.
Well, thank you very much. Let me just say congratulations, and what a great model that is. For those who may not understand, justice delayed costs the taxpayers a lot of money, among other things, right? So thank you very much, and I appreciate the answer and the work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Jones.
My last question for this panel.
You heard that. Last question. Last question.
We did a lot of work with, and you talked about it, saving a lot of homes from sheriff's sale, remides. There's a secondary issue that we found to be true dealing with AVI, and that is tangled titles. Can you talk about that for a brief moment so that all of us can kind of understand what you're doing about it?
That, as part of the mortgage foreclosure diversion program, there are counselors and individuals who are available in the courtroom who deal with that issue as individuals, homeowners come in. They will work with lawyers who are available to get to the bottom of that, and then that's presented to the judge or the court to try to resolve that. So we are being very active in trying to ensure that these tangled titles are untangled and that homeowners can then move forward to make sure that their homes are secure.
In many of the cases, Mr. Chair, where we're trying to get them relief from tax increases, they can't benefit from it because 2-3 generations back, they didn't transfer the title, so the homeowner's name is not on the deed.
Yes.
And it's causing a problem.
I think we've all experienced that. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. No further questions, Your Honors. Thank you very much for all the work you do. And to the staff of the courts, thank you all very much. Our next office I know he's been waiting over there patiently. The Office of the District Attorney.
Thank you. Good job.
Yeah, I'll check and let you know. Hey, sir, how are you?
Huh? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think. If we could get started, so we can move on, we're a little behind schedule here. Again, District Attorney Williams, appreciate your patience, and please proceed, identify yourself and please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Good morning. Very good, sir.
For the record, I am Seth Williams. I have the pleasure, the honor, and distinction of being the elected District Attorney for the City and County of Philadelphia. How are you today?
Okay, very good, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, I'm very glad to have the opportunity to be with you today. I'm joined here in chambers, in addition with many other members of my office, most specifically to my left, George Mosey. He is the Deputy District Attorney for our Juvenile Division. To my right is Mr. Greg Rowe. He is the Chief of my Legislation Unit and is primarily responsible for my testimony and preparation of my testimony today, so I'd like to thank him again personally. I'm also joined specifically by Ms. Doreen Rooney to my left. She is our Chief Financial Officer. So again, I am very blessed to have a wonderful staff. Anything that I say today that you appreciate or like, please credit to them. Any mistakes or mistakes with the English language, please attribute that to me. But again, I have submitted as of Friday my full testimony. I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that you make that a part of the permanent record for my testimony.
Absolutely.
I was told by Council President that I could speak for 3 hours. Is that correct?
I think you heard hours. He meant minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I know that I'm all that stands between you and your staff and lunch. But I could speak for 3 hours about the great work of the men and women of the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. As you know, I love Philadelphia. I'm a lifelong resident. I'm the son of a secretary of the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, a school teacher. He also worked at a recreation center and ran day camps for the Philadelphia Fairmount Park Commission. I love the city. I came back to be an assistant district attorney, and I loved being an assistant district attorney. It was during that process, however, that I learned how dysfunctional the criminal justice system in Philadelphia is in general, and specifically how dysfunctional the operations and antiquated protocol of the district attorney's office were at that time. As I've stated, I've submitted my full testimony, but in summary, my testimony is this, Mr. Chairman, that since 2010, working with all of our partners in the criminal justice system here in Philadelphia, we have made tremendous reforms. And by any qualitative and quantifiable standard, the criminal justice system in Philadelphia and the District Attorney's Office of Philadelphia operate and provide justice in a much better way. Now, we've had a better relationship with the administration and the mayor in the preparation of our budget. It used to be we were just told what our budget was going to be. I'm very thankful that we've had conversations with the administration and have gone back and forth. But the truth, Mr. Chairman, the truth, our share of the budget since 2008 has actually decreased. If we receive the same percentage, allowing only for inflation, we would receive an additional $2.3 million than we were appropriated for this year. So, Mr. Chairman, the summary of my testimony is that the District Attorney's Office, its employees, are doing a tremendous job, but are woefully, that's all caps, exclamation point, woefully underfunded in comparison to district attorneys' offices across the country and in comparison to our partners in the criminal justice system here in Philadelphia. So let me take you back to 2009. The Philadelphia Inquirer published its groundbreaking series, Justice Delayed, Denied, Dismissed, which analyzed the criminal justice system in Philadelphia. The series made many conclusions that were startling to some, not surprising to those who work in the system on a daily basis, yet were disconcerting to everyone. Among the conclusions in this series were that 2 in 3 people accused of violent crimes walked free of all charges. Only 1 in 10 defendants at that time in gun assault cases was found guilty of that charge. And 1 in 5 violent crime prosecutions ended in a felony conviction. I was one of those not surprised with what the authors of this series had reported. Indeed, my campaign echoed many of the themes in this series. I vowed, if you can recall, that if elected, I would reform our criminal justice system by making it more efficient, fairer, more focused on violent and repeat offenders, and smarter by relying on more evidence-based practices. Today, I would like to tell you part of the story of how far we have come, how we have meaningfully transformed the criminal justice system in Philadelphia, how we have collaborated with the partners such as the courts who were just here. And they weren't doing it for show. They were thanking, in large part, the district attorney's office for the work that we've all done together. Every other public safety entity has received far greater general fund appropriations increases since fiscal year 2008. Every one of them. You and I, that being the members of council, have fought together to obtain the modest increases I have thus far received. And for that, I am grateful. But the status quo is unacceptable. It's almost like we're being penalized because of the great work of Ms. Rooney to efficiently balance our budget. So let's start by talking about our wonderful successes. 5.5 years since the publication of the article in the Inquirer, it is with great sense of pride that I report that we have made transformational improvements in the way we handle and dispose of cases. Our office has been performing better and more efficiently, I believe, than ever before. We have made it a priority to divert appropriate offenders out of the criminal justice system and ensure that they participate in the right programs that will help them stay out of trouble in the future. In doing so, we have been able to focus more of our energy and resources on holding the most dangerous offenders accountable, implementing trailblazing initiatives like focused deterrence, GunStat, and hastening the speed at which cases are resolved. Again, in summary, we were a laughingstock nationally in 2009. Today, people come from all over the United States to see what Lauren Baraldi is doing with our gun violence task force, what's going on with GunStat, how is focused deterrence working, how is it that we have so many diversionary programs, how is it 40% of all of our misdemeanor cases today are resolved through diversionary programs, allowing us to have the wonderful reduction in homicides that we have enjoyed here in Philadelphia. So it starts in our charging unit. Smart on crime is a term that I use a lot. It is not merely a glib catchphrase. It represents my approach as district attorney and what I expect of the outstanding men and women of my office. At the core of being smart on crime, Mr. Chairman, is a system of changes I've made to our charging unit. Unlike in our past, our charging unit was staffed then with people who were being penalized. Now it's being staffed by strong, experienced prosecutors who have an intimate working knowledge of the law. We have raised the bar on the evidence we require in order to go forward with responsible charging decisions. I believe Philadelphians want us to charge the right people with the right crimes, nothing more, nothing less. This also means that attorneys I ask to serve in my charging unit are those with significant trial experience and who otherwise in the past would have been handling the more complicated criminal cases in my office. It's because I trust them to make the right decisions. We've accelerated the time it takes to move cases through the system. Delays have been reduced, and cases are resolved faster. Between 2009 and 2014, the average time for misdemeanors to be disposed of was reduced by more than 2 months, from approximately 7 months to approximately 4.5 months. This means less backlog for courts, swift justice for defendants, and quicker relief for our victims. We make meaningful and early plea offers. We also continue to offer meaningful plea options at the earliest possible moment in the criminal justice process through the use of smart rooms. Smart rooms provide the opportunity to reach an early plea agreement, which prevents many cases from even going to trial. Nearly 4,300 cases in 2014 were resolved in our smart rooms. About a quarter of common pleas matters are now resolved in our smart rooms. This has provided extraordinary fiscal and administrative relief for the criminal justice system in Philadelphia and our taxpayers, but still requires a significant amount of work from our staff. When we began the diversionary programs and the smart rooms, we had grant funding to hire and maintain staff. In fact, in the last year, where we had such funding, we had more than $500,000 to cover salaries. We are no longer eligible for grant funding for our pretrial programs because the Department of Justice informed us that they provide funding to implement new and innovative programs, not for reoccurring expenses. It was their hope that City Council, the mayor, would invest in these cost-saving programs. We have reshaped the criminal justice system by diverting nonviolent offenders. Diverting low-level nonviolent offenders is necessary. Locking these individuals up only makes them more likely to commit new crimes when they get out because their underlying criminogenic needs are not being addressed. And they are locked up with far more dangerous offenders who are terrible influences. The breadth of our diversionary programs is enormous, with nearly 15 different programs. In 2014, more than 10,000 cases were referred to diversionary programs. Of those 10,000 cases, nearly 9,900 misdemeanor cases were referred to diversionary programs. In that same year, nearly 5,900 misdemeanor cases already referred to diversionary programs were successfully completed. AMP is one of our more robust programs, the Accelerated Misdemeanor Program. It saw an increase of 9% between 2013 and 2014, even though the total number of misdemeanors charged generally throughout Philadelphia during that same time period went down 12.5%. Felony diversion. In 2014, we diverted more than 1,300 felonies to intermediate punishment and drug treatment courts. This was almost unheard of prior to 2010. These individuals need treatment. Otherwise, they will continue to commit new crimes because their underlying addiction will have been left unabated. The Choice is Yours is a program, again, that I stole from the district attorney then of San Francisco, Kamala Harris. She's now the Attorney General. The Choice is Yours provides pre-entry services. We're going to talk a lot. People talk about re-entry. I believe in pre-entry or no-entry programs. What can we do so that people will get the assistance that they need and not get the criminal record? And the Choice is Yours program is one such program that was started by a grant of almost $1.4 million from Jerry Lenfest. He, the Lenfest Foundation, and the William Penn Foundation. Since then, the money has dried up. But it's a program that can save us, instead of spending $40,000 a year on state prisons, we're spending $4,000 a year to give these young men and young women the life skills training that they need, the literacy training that they need, and it's a success. Instead of having 63% of the people failing like they do with the recidivism rate from the state court prison, only about 5% of the people in this program have been shown to get rearrested. So when we talk about diversion, everybody wants us to do more to keep people out of prison or put the right people in and not put the wrong people in prison. It's at a cost. It costs us more money to evaluate those cases than just, as my predecessor said, let's just try it. Let the judges work it out. No, we're trying to be smart on crime, to know the difference between a bad guy and a guy having a bad day. But while the city saves dollars from these programs, my office actually spends more time, more effort, more personnel, and more resources on diversionary programs than if we'd merely tried the underlying cases. The fundamental point of diversion is ensuring that a district attorney's office spends time screening the cases and then helping to ensure that offenders comply with those requirements. If offenders do not comply, it is our staff's duty to address what sanctions may be appropriate or what other steps should be taken to better ensure the offender will not commit new crimes and to ensure public safety. Fewer cases are being dismissed, and the most dangerous of offenders are being brought to justice. Our felony held for court rate has dramatically increased from 59% in 2009 to 72% in 2014. During this time period, the held for court rates for illegal firearms possession increased from 77% to 85%, robberies from 47% to 64%, and rapes, which held for court rates, however, hovered below 70% in 2010 and 2011, are now at 75%. Most notably, our felony conviction rate has significantly increased. Consider that in 2009, the felony conviction rate was just 43%. In 2014, the crucial figure was 61%. During this time period, the conviction rate for illegal firearms possession increased from 53% to 64%. Our efforts have yielded prison population decreases. Again, we can go across the board and see how things that our office has done in cooperation with the police department, in cooperation with the courts, the sheriff's office, the prisons, the public defenders, have saved this city money. It's been estimated anywhere between $1 to $3 million a year. And that's good for the city. I know we have potholes to fill and a lot of other needs of the city, schools and everything else. I'm only asking for a percentage of that to be reinvested in our cost-saving measures. One of the wonderful programs is focused deterrence. For the better part of the past 2 years, members of my staff have dedicated hundreds, if not thousands of hours to overcome gun violence in South Philadelphia through focused deterrence. One of the key components of focused deterrence is the call-in, where individuals identified as members of violent groups are brought face-to-face with a partnership of law enforcement and social service agencies and presented with two options. Seek for help in changing your behavior, and services will be made available to you, or take part in violent activities and see all the members of your group face certain and serious consequences. In August of 2014, we were able to get our message out again to members of 14 different groups who attended the call-in. While these call-ins have had positive effects, we have still had to conduct several enforcement actions after we have determined that a shooting or a homicide was group motivated. This requires even more further time and financial sacrifice from my office, as well as other partnering agencies. As a result of 6 shooting incidents attributed to gang members in 2014, 6 enforcements were initiated on those groups. In 2014, we had 31 group members receiving social assistance through Social Service Coordinator Reuben Jones. Last year, we made room in our already constricted budget to hire an outreach worker, Mr. Glasgow, a South Philadelphia native, to partner with Mr. Jones. This is the type of priority we place on evidence-based, innovative solutions to the problems of violence we face in Philadelphia. So again, I'm very thankful and proud of the tremendous working relationship we have with Commissioner Ramsey. A lot of the success for the reduction in violent crime is owed to him and his police department, of course. But it's like Law and Order. I tell people you have to watch the TV show Law and Order. The first half hour, that's the police. Second half hour is the assistant DAs. Put together, it's criminal justice. And I'm very thankful for our partnership. But I want to talk a little bit about homicides. I have a chart here that shows in 1989, unfortunately, Philadelphia experienced about 500 homicides. As a result of the implementation of community-based prosecution, where my DAs are now assigned geographically, get to know the names of the police, the community groups, the clergy, the business leaders, we work more efficiently and effectively with law enforcement partners and the community. We were able, as a result of that, to create GunStat, where we use empirical data to identify the most violent neighborhoods and the most violent groups and individuals in our city, which allowed us then to create folks deterrence, where again we use very, very specific intelligence on the criminal behavior in a very specific neighborhood in South Philadelphia. All of these things, in addition to just wonderful trauma units in Philadelphia, I will give them a lot of credit as well. But as a result of us being smart on crime with the least violent offenders, focusing more on the violent offenders, I believe we can see that we had a significant reduction in homicides. In 2012, we had 331. In 2013, we had the lowest homicide rate this city has experienced since 1967. Last year, we were up 2. We had 249. But statistically, we actually would have had less. We added 4 to that number as a result of, you will recall, the mother and her children that were the victims of men that were speeding away from a carjacking and a sexual assault, and they hit the mother and her children as they were selling fruit and flowers for their church. In the years past, we wouldn't even considered those vehicular homicides in our homicide total. But the commissioner and we agreed that those numbers should have been included for last year. But not for that, we would have had a lower number last year, which has been our lowest number since 1967. And as of this morning, we are on pace to have a lower homicide rate than we did last year. So again, I think everywhere I go in the city, Philadelphians come up to me and they thank me, and I recognize that they're thanking the young men and women that work for me in my office and the hard work that they do to help make our city safer. A traffic court is an example, again, of a good collaboration, except the budget. Collaboration is critically important, and we have done so, and I believe we are partners in keeping our community safer. But collaboration is more than just a one-way street. For example, my office took on the role of administering traffic court. We were asked because our partners in the criminal justice system had confidence in our ability to improve the administration of justice in a traffic court that had been on the front pages and in federal court. We brought in our good supervisors and assistant district attorneys and other staff to run it. We do not seek traffic court, but we understand our responsibilities as stewards of justice. There is some irony in the fact that despite our willingness to take on new challenges and be good partners, when it comes time to appropriate budgets, we do not necessarily see that goodwill and confidence translate to an acceptable appropriation amount. What is it that we need going forward? We have to sustain our efforts. We have to continue to put the resources and time into our changing criminal justice system so that we don't go back to the way it was. We have to address the mental health crisis that exists. Gun violence is still an unacceptably high level here in the city of Philadelphia. And we have to continue to identify and implement meaningful solutions that will result in fewer shootings, fewer injuries, and fewer deaths. Additionally, it seems clear that additional resources from my office will be required for the city to fully comply with the recommendations of the recent COPS report on the use of deadly force by the Philadelphia Police Department. One of the report's most important recommendations was that the time to investigate a police shooting must be reduced. As you may have noted, the report specifically commended my office, the Office of the Philadelphia District Attorney, for significantly speeding up our shooting investigations once we received the cases from the police department. We are confident we can do even more in this regard, which will be crucial in meeting the goal of implementing the report's proposals. Members of my staff have had preliminary conversations with members of the police department's command staff, but it is apparent that we cannot maintain these advances, let alone improve on them, unless we can devote additional personnel to these investigations, and thus funding to cover the salary cost of several experienced prosecutors and investigators. The District Attorney's Office budget, yet again, is woefully inadequate. In terms of my budget, the mayor's proposed budget is once again inadequate. At best, it flat funds my office. We continue to be underfunded as compared to other major cities. This time, Mr. Rowe is going to show you a chart of the 14 largest cities, Mr. President. Philadelphia ranks lowest in terms of funding per violent crime. This is the first year, Mr. President, that I'm reporting that to you. Every other year that I was here, I said that we were second only to Wayne County, Michigan, Detroit, a city that went bankrupt and had to have its state send in someone to run the finances. Well, even Wayne, Michigan has seen fit to fund its district attorney's office better than the current administration in the city of Philadelphia. So here you see that chart. If we were to look at the violent crime, the rate of violent crime, and per crime, and we divide that by our budget, we are the lowest. The criminal justice public safety budget has increased in Philadelphia 18.1% between fiscal year '08 and the current proposed budget. The district attorney's office budget, however, has increased only 9.3%, significantly below that level. Again, the next chart. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure, based on their interactions with the mayor and his staff, they were all deemed to receive increases. You see here, OIT, what does that say, Councilman? What percentage do they get as an increase?
146.
146% increase during the Nutter administration. The police department, correctly, they deserve it. They have police cars that don't run. They've received 22% increase. The sheriff, 19.68%. An average of all of our criminal justice partners is 18.07%. Fire, up 15.81%. The Defenders Association, up 15%. Prisons, up 10%. District Attorney's Office, all the partners in the criminal justice, everyone that receives a budget from the city of Philadelphia in the public safety sphere, we have received the lowest increase over that period. And again, if we'd only allowed for inflation, we have that chart as well. Again, the amount of funding my office has received as a percentage of the city budget has decreased since 2008. In fiscal year 2008, my office's share of the city budget was 0.81002, a mere rounding error for some departments. In fiscal year 2015, my office's share was 0.75886%. If the district attorney's office received the same 0.81002%, our budget would be $2.3 million higher. So at the very beginning, I didn't come asking even for that. I'm trying to be reasonable. I've asked for an increase of 1.25. Again, I think this is a modest but fair increase, given the fiscal challenges still facing the city, while taking into account our demonstrated need for additional funding to continue and expand the good work we're doing to make this city safer and the justice system fairer. Even with the proposed increase, the overall increase in my office budget from fiscal year 2008 to present would still be less than the overall public safety budget during the same time period. So again, I'm very thankful for this time, Mr. President. Again, I'd ask that my entire written testimony be moved into your record. And at this time, Mr. President, I'm more than willing to answer any of the questions you may have. And I have people that are much smarter than I am sitting behind me that I'm sure can answer specific questions even better than I.
Thank you, sir. I have someone much smarter than I am sitting next to me, so
Okay.
I understand. And thank you. Good
Yes, sir.
afternoon. What do you attribute the lack of response or the appropriate response to your budget request increases as opposed to every other department?
Mr. President, I don't know. I try to play nice. I smile. I go to meetings. I try to show them what we've done as I've laid out here. Every quantifiable and qualitative measurement, we are doing a much better job. I think to answer your question honestly, it is that they expect us to handle less, to do more with less in an efficient way, while others might not. And it's like we're being penalized.
So you're getting
We're being penalized.
for being good. Your
We're being
department.
penalized for having Ms. Rooney and my deputies, my first assistant, run an office as efficiently as possible. But there's a possible cost to that. See, everywhere I go, when I go out on community walks with Councilman Squilla, right? When Councilwoman Blackwell and I walk through her neighborhood, people want the DA's office to do more. Nobody's asking me to do less. We're finding creative and efficient ways that have helped the city save money. I'm asking for a mere reinvestment into our office. I'm thankful to the mayor's office. They've given us some money to increase our computer capabilities. That's necessary. But that kind of just got us to 1990. We have to keep up with the technologies of 2015. But I just think that we're being penalized for running an office so efficiently. And there's so much more that we could do with just a slight investment. Again, the young assistant DAs started my office at $51,000. They have huge loan debt, from law school. They get trained, but the very nature of being smart on crime, Mr. President, requires that people have experience so that then they can make the decisions on what is the most appropriate way to handle this defendant's cases.
Right.
We can't just get them to get some experience and then let them go work at Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe.
Right.
We need to be able to reinvest in those that are most qualified to keep them in the district attorney's office to make these tough decisions.
All right. Can you go back to the first chart, please?
Yes, sir.
From here, I can't see the dates on the dramatic, the last three?
Yes, Mr. President, like 1985, we had about 550 homicides.
So that's 85 before
So
it dropped
1989, Mr. President, is to your far left. And we had about 500 homicides that year.
Okay.
It then shows a decrease, and then it shows in 2012 what the number was, and I had that written here.
dramatically. Which one is 2012? That one? Okay.
That was on my testimony. So, Mr. President, in 2012, there were 331 homicides.
And then
In 2013, there was 247.
Okay.
And, Mr. President, last year, there were 249.
Okay. If you can answer this question, what's the comparable timeline on a national trend for that particular category?
Nationally, we're seeing an even greater reduction in gun violence and homicides by handgun. And again, I tell people, you have to have the political will to make that reduction. The city of New York, over the same time period, went from having approximately 2,400 homicides a year, with a comparable 85% being committed by handguns, as we have in the city of Philadelphia, to last year, Philadelphia, we had more homicides caused by handguns in a city of 1.5 million than the entire city of New York. but they had the political will to reduce the gun violence. So we've done some things.
Okay, well, the reason I'm
Yes.
asking that question, when the economy traditionally, it's based on the national trend. When the economy improves in Philly, more than likely it's improving overall in the country. And I'm asking similarly, because I do think they're connected. Increase in the economy, probably there will be a subsequent decrease in crimes committed as a result of that. And I'm just trying to get a sense, and again, I appreciate all the great work that you all have done. If that significant drop had to do with the economy based on the national trends of crime, homicides being reduced, or was it just simply an aberration in the city of Philadelphia?
Mr. President, to answer that, I would almost need a couple PhDs in criminology, because there's so many things. It's not just apples to apples. Many of these states have much more strident penalties for the unlawful possession of firearms. As you know, I've been going to Harrisburg to try to change Section 6108 of the Pennsylvania Crimes Code to make it a penalty of the possibility of incarceration of not less than 2 years for carrying a gun on the city streets without a firearm. In New York, they made it 3.5%. That was, 3.5 years if you don't have a license and you carry a gun. That's part of the reason why they had a significant reduction in New York. But there are a lot of different things. As you also know, of the top 10 largest cities in America, we have the greatest percentage, unfortunately, of Philadelphians that live at or below the national poverty level,
Right.
with slightly more than 30% of all Philadelphians living at or below the poverty level. So when you have that rate, when you have the just unbelievable availability of handguns that we have in Philadelphia, when we have so few young men having appropriate conflict resolution skills, and again, one of the things we did with focused deterrence, we had as minimal as the expense of Ms. Baraldi, who is here, having a basketball tournament. We got some of the most violent offenders in South Philadelphia to agree to a 4-team basketball tournament. And that if any member of your team got arrested in the month leading up to the tournament, your whole team was going to be forfeited.
Right.
These guys policed each other, and no one has been arrested since then.
Right. So, and again, I want to commend you on the great work that you've been doing. I have to some degree, a perspective on the trend in the city of Philadelphia that I think that the commitment on dealing with the 40% that are at or below the poverty level has not been where it should have been. And I think that if there was a stronger or had been a stronger commitment to deal with that issue over the last several years, that it would have contributed more to reducing homicides and all the other associated crimes. Because I just think it's a direct correlation to a person having a decent job or career or whatever, legal income, and their ability to raise their family. And I think that just passed down through the generation. And I just don't think that we've committed the way we should have committed to deal with that poverty level. It's one thing to have a summit and talk about it, but the fact of the matter is that out of the 10 largest cities, we have overwhelmingly the most significant rate of poverty. So, you know, and part of our focus from our perspective should be dealing with the underlying problem. As this issue in Baltimore, and they're finally getting to that conversation, but they got beyond the, you know, the fact that young Mr. Gray died in wherever he died, in the van, I mean, in the hospital, but what was the root cause of that death? But there was obviously a root cause that caused that particular environment to be created in the city of Baltimore, where we had several nights of rioting. And I just think here, we got to do a better job. You know, we have to put in place a policy and a strategy to deal with it. And, you know, I say it again, I represent probably the most diverse district in the state of Pennsylvania. You know, I represent this building right here and all of the wonderful high rises over here. And people are excited and happy, and, you know, we're asking people to come, and you'll have a couple of 3, 4, 5 million people coming here. But I also represent that area up there north of Girard Avenue, where there continues to be some significant levels of despair. And we have to do a better job of focusing on that. And I know the fact that you've gone out and walked those streets to see it, not just from a criminal perspective, but trying to come up with a strategy to assist us in dealing with that side of the equation. I want to ask you one question. It's kind of a loaded question, no pun intended. We passed unanimously legislation, because you referenced the fact that the front side or the back side of the challenge is $40,000 a year for keeping a person incarcerated, as opposed to spending $4,000 a year in the program that you've established. And we took a similar approach, and we shifted $500,000 from the prison budget to a program that created a landscaping opportunity for individuals who had been in the system but exhibited the willingness to participate in a way that would be productive and going through all the programs. And for whatever reason, that money was never entertained. We did it in the budget, and the challenge is in council, we appropriate, but the administration can always choose to just ignore. And the term I used earlier in the budget process, to blow us off. We, in fact, inquired about that particular bill and that appropriation. And again, no response. My question to you, we have another hearing and another appropriation. I know I'm putting you on the spot. To appropriate money so we can deal with a program to ensure that the recidivism rate is reduced as a result of providing an opportunity to a person who deserves it, because some people, you know, they may not be in a position to take advantage of that. Would you be supportive of that particular transfer of revenue?
Yes, Mr. President. I think it goes back to the statement you made just seconds ago. A cynic might think that we're not doing enough to reduce the rate of gun violence because of who's being shot and who's doing the shooting. And so I believe that we have to be smart on crime, that every life matters. I get equally upset every time my phone goes off, no matter the profession or the race of the shooter or the person that's shot. But just last week, Mr. President, I was at a press conference for Fight Crime, Invest in Kids, a national organization. I was joined by District Attorney Furman of Montgomery County, the District Attorney Hogan of Chester County, District Attorney Whalen of Delaware County. All of us are there to talk about one thing. Prosecutors and police commissioners across the nation believe the most pressing way, the best way for us to reduce crime is to invest in early childhood education and truancy reduction programs. So I say that everywhere that I go. I would like to do all that I could to put the District Attorney's Office in Philadelphia out of business, and we would do that best by investing in every child so they're ready for school, both academically and socially, and learning those conflict resolution skills that if they don't, they end up with me. And I tell people the DA's office is the social worker of last resort. So yes, I would be supportive. I'd be there with you, stand next to you with a bullhorn to talk about the need to invest money in preventive measures. But at the same time, we try to do that in our office. And staffing, supervising all of those programs that are smart on crime actually cost us in dollars, personnel, and resources more than if I said, you know what, we're not going to have any programs like that. We'll just try all of them. That's just a much easier way to manage our office, but I think it'd be the wrong way and wouldn't help the dispense of justice and fairness in the city of Philadelphia.
Okay, thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I recognize that you are a different type of DA. You've been geographic-based prosecutions, I think, are a part of some of the reduction. We appreciate you opening an office in our district on 60th Street that acts as a deterrent and at least a beacon that we are interested in what goes on there. That's ground zero in my district.
That's where I used to catch the 46 bus every day coming home from Central High School.
Don't hold that against you.
All right.
But it is the most challenged part of my district by way of crime. Every 28 days, somebody's going to get shot there, not always fatally, but within those sectors, within the 19th district, are my most challenged. So thank you for putting that there. Focused deterrent, which we touted in South Philly as something that we wanted to see expanded. We haven't, where are we by way of a commitment for the soft side of the focused deterrent, meaning social work, those kinds of things that actually give people a choice? Where are we with that?
All right, so there was a slight expansion with focused deterrence as to the mayor's office agreed and picked up the tab for another social worker to assist with some of those soft services you're mentioning. It'd be wonderful in many ways to continue the focused deterrence model in other parts of the city. That takes a lot of intelligence, though, and by intelligence, I mean the reason why it's been so successful in South Philadelphia, we believe, and criminologists believe. David Kennedy from New York, the John Jay School of Criminology, has come down and has evaluated this and says it's the best example of focused deterrence across the nation. Because of the police department's gathering of information, targeting individuals and groups, and then us using that information to better prosecute, to better track them than ever before. So it would be great and beneficial, I believe, to expand focused deterrence, but it would have to be done in a very measured way, in a way in cooperation with the empirical data gathering capabilities and expertise of the Philadelphia Police Department. But Councilman, you also mentioned just the community outreach. And in years past, people thought that was just fluff. But as we see what happened in Baltimore, Ferguson, right, Staten Island, having someone, and it's not perfect yet. When people go to that office, the office we have in downtown, the office we have in North Philadelphia, it's not perfect yet. But we have to make those investments. Me going and speaking to kids in grade schools and the Over Park Town Watch, that is an investment in trying to ensure that the public understands what we do. So they don't just see me when there's a crisis, but every day, so that we can build better relations. And again, what's much more important than does Seth Williams show up at a community meeting? Did I go to Mount Airy Day? You better believe I was at Mount Airy Day with you and Congressman Fattah. Am I right? Yep. But more important, there was a group of assistant district attorneys that were there. There was a group of assistant district attorneys last night that played basketball in the 16th District Cops and Kids basketball program. That's more important than just where I am, because the public sees those young ADAs. The young ADAs also learn about what's important in the community. It makes them better champions in court. But all of this is very, very important, because we're just one spark away from what happened in Baltimore if we don't do the hard work every day. And that costs money. People want us to have more people at community action centers. We don't get the money, though.
So we want, so I know in Councilman President Clark's district, he has some challenges up there in the 22nd,
right,
as evidenced by loss of life.
Right.
I have some challenges in the 19th, Councilwoman Blackwell, Southwest Detectives. So we want to see that, even though empirical data suggests South Philly was a good place for it to start, it is not the place where we want it to end. We want to know how we can be helpful, to see it expanded in other areas.
And that requires experienced prosecutors and experienced investigators, which means we have to have people that we can keep in our office. And while they're saintly, they also have bills to pay, right? Comcast isn't just giving ADAs a pass.
No?
No. If you recall, I was on the front page of the Daily News 2 years ago because I was a month behind on my PGW bill. Remember that? So I don't even get a pass, right? Okay. So we have to invest in these people. Just little increments would be helpful.
So we support that. And let me transition and ask, so in my next go-round, if you could get individuals that deal with the forfeiture unit.
Yes.
Up here, whoever that is.
Okay.
And
well, he's already here.
all right.
Deputy District Attorney Mosey's ready.
Not Mosey.
He's right here. He's right next to us. The pride of 59th and Webster.
Yeah, I know. I didn't see you over there. So I wouldn't have asked about it if I saw you. I'll wait until my next round to talk about forfeiture.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's just surprising to me that the two agencies that I care most about, the Bureau of Autism Services and the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office, are both, because they're so efficient in the way they appropriate every dime, are penalized for that efficiency. So I have great sympathy for you. I'm a huge fan of the work of focused deterrence, and I will offer my continued support for that. And I've gone to all but one call-in. It's powerful stuff. I agree with the other councilman that we have to expand this beyond South Philly. I know you've just spoken to this, but I want to congratulate you for your creativity on the Focused Deterrence basketball tournament. It's just extraordinary as you build those bridges with the community. It's a wonderful example of the community and law enforcement working together to make neighborhoods better in a meaningful way and build those bridges of communication.
And Councilman Squilla showed up at that tournament. I challenged him to a foul shot shooting contest, but he declined. He didn't want to show me up, so I did it against a little 12-year-old that was there.
There you go, picking on that little 12-year-old. But I also would like to praise you for the Choice is Yours program. I personally went over to Judge Neifeld's courtroom in December and saw the meaningful work. I'm impressed with your creativity with the funding, and I'll just lift something from your testimony, if you don't mind, that the Choice is Yours is an evidence-based pre-entry program that helps offenders subject to state prison sentences before they are ever sentenced by providing important life skills and training and other skills designed to help them with their criminogenic needs. I'm going to steal that word.
Sure.
So I look smart when I'm out on a campaign trail. But I'd like to, again, emphasize that this funding has not come from the city, but it came from Lenfest and the William Penn Foundations. And finally, as you and Mr. Rowe have looked on one of those sheets, one of those projections, I know that since I've been in council, we've heard about your struggles in technology. And since joining council, your efforts to improve technology using e-discovery and other initiatives. Since OIT has gotten a 146% increase, what structural assistance has OIT given your office in the last couple of years? Are they meeting your needs? And is there a promise of that, some share of that 146% financial support this coming fiscal year?
We have had initial dialogues. They have given us some additional hardware, but it's not enough. Ms. Baraldi and there's a young man, where's Moshe? What's Moshe's last name? Mr. Berman is here. We hired 2 young folks to be basically data analysts for us. Everyone wants to know statistics. Everybody wants to know, well, what percentage have you increased this? What is all these things? And we were originally using a computer software program to gather and analyze this data that was created to send out subpoenas in the 1990s. But because of some very intelligent MacGyver-esque young folks that work in my office, we were able to figure out a way to gather and compile the statistics. But we need more. Just to answer your question, just for my communications director to go on our district attorney's website to show the change in my marital status, we couldn't just do it in our office. It took us about 3 months by sending emails over and over and over to OIT to get them to change something that was on our website. So we're making improvements, but it's not enough. We need more. And all these investments, again, we're not asking to even keep up with inflation, which is what I should be doing here. I should be jumping up and screaming just to ask for what would be the inflationary increase. But I'm being, I believe, modest and trying to work with council and the mayor for what I think is just a necessary increase to keep us where we could do even more than what we're already amazingly doing for the city.
I would just like to underscore what I believe will be Councilman Jones' concern on stolen deeds and foreclosures, that the real issue here is that that issue could be substantially addressed if you had substantially more resources.
Right. See, again, it'd be easy, just every case that came to us, if we just tried it, whatever happens, happens, just call the witnesses. If they're there, they're there. If they're not, they're not. But that's what got us into the trouble that led to the series Justice Delayed, Denied, Dismissed. So now, instead of having just a municipal court unit where you have the 30 newest attorneys with a supervisor and an assistant chief and a felony waivers unit, so we used to have just 6 supervisors in the 3 largest units in our office. Well, now through geographic prosecution, we have 6 units. Each of those has 2 supervisors, so they can better evaluate the cases, better instruct the assistant district attorneys, to better cooperate and go out to meetings with the police and the community to evaluate data, to better identify individuals that we should have on gun stat and track those that possess guns illegally or use firearms illegally, commit gunpoint robberies illegally. It's time intensive, but it's showing the results. Having tripled the number of people in our charging unit has shown significant reduction in a lot of issues across the criminal justice system, to include those that are awaiting trial, pre-trial up on State Road. There's a 2,000 bed reduction, I believe, is what the prisons testified to up there on State Road. In large part, that has to do with the cooperation and the vision of the district attorney's office. And again, all of those things work together. We're committed to them, but we are just asking for a modest increase so that we can do what we do so well, even better.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Mr. O, how are you?
Oh, doing well. I have 2 questions. The first is, how much money do you need? Just in dollars. What are you seeking?
1.25 million, which is still less than the 2.3 if we just allowed for inflation, if our budget remained just the same 0.8002 it had been in fiscal year 08.
Okay, thank you for that answer. That's pretty clear. The second one is just, kind of your thoughts and policy. So violent crime, biggest concern, you're addressing that. Could you give me your thoughts, your policy, your strategy on crimes that are commercial corridor crimes? That is, a lot of neighborhoods have commercial corridors. Police are pulled off of that area, down to where there's homicides. And then a lot of these commercial corridors have crimes such as prostitution, loitering, small drug dealing, types of things that really kind of negatively impact on the viability of the commercial area. It's difficult, for policing because the police are called away. How can the DA's office be effective in trying to clean up those areas so that the businesses can thrive more, and I believe as a result the neighborhood can thrive better?
All right. Well, again, thank you for that question. And members of my office go to Police District Advisory Council meetings, each one of them across all the police districts, monthly. They go to business meetings. You name the civic association, members of our office are going to those meetings to gather information, not just to go there and preach about what we do, but just to listen. I think, though, changes that Commissioner Ramsey has made, going from a police sector-driven, 911-driven department to moving towards the PSAs that we have, is really trying to address your question, Councilman O. In the District Attorney's Office, we try to be a part of that through geographic-based prosecution. And again, I reorganized the office instead of having, and the courts worked with us and reorganized the courthouse, which has significantly reduced the backlog of cases, the overtime paid to police officers for just waiting around in the CJC when cases are being continued. But again, we go to those community meetings to try to see what is specifically needed in Longcrest. What are the issues, right, in Eastwick, which might be totally different than what people in Fox Chase have issues with or problems with, or in University City, where a problem might just be stolen bicycles. Well, that might seem insignificant to some people in maybe parts of North Philadelphia where we have a very high homicide rate, it's real to the people in those other neighborhoods. And so we try to work with them, create programs, put on training in our community action centers to address the specific needs of Philadelphians across, from the airport all the way up to Grant and the Boulevard.
Well, I appreciate that. I've seen the DAs at the community meetings I go to, so I appreciate their presence, and I think that is important. So I appreciate your attention to that matter. I know there's a lot of issues in our city, but, I think the quality of life issues, the violent crime issues, but also, if these commercial corridors are not places people want to go to, walk to, drive to, you lose jobs, you lose businesses, you get a lot of abandoned shops and things like that. And I'm happy to hear that you're on top of that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Williams. I appreciate you coming here today. And I, too, since being a representative of South Philadelphia, appreciate the Focus Deterrent program and the collaboration with police. But I understand the reason why we actually went towards South Philadelphia was because they had the most intel on
Correct.
a lot of the gang members and the hierarchy of the gangs and how it portrayed. I was present at the basketball game, and I remember that the invitation to have the foul shooting contest was only to the members of the teams and not to me, or I would have taken you up on that. We'll do that the next one. But we understand that also takes resources and money. Has there been a budget for this year to continue to focus the Deterrent program?
Well, there is no, really, unless I'm wrong, we don't have a specific budget for focused deterrence internally. We just have members of our gun violence task force. We have assistant district attorneys from our South Division that help, manage those cases. We hired an individual, as I stated during my testimony, to assist Mr. Reuben Jones in what he does. But really, it's just us taking on this because we see how important it is, for the ultimate outcome. And again, being smart on crime isn't just a glib catchphrase. We have to show Philadelphians that the criminal justice system is fair. When people think it's not fair, that's when people burn buildings down. And I think what we've done by prosecuting Monsignor William Lynn, right, having an extensive grand jury investigation showing how he and, shielded priests from prosecution, where they then reoffended, by going after Dr. Kermit Gosnell, by taking on a prosecution that the Attorney General of the Commonwealth thought was non-prosecutable and getting successful prosecutions in that case. When Philadelphians see that we're not just going after Pookie and Man at the corner of 60th and Catherine, but that we're going after crimes in the suites as well as the crimes in the streets, I think then they begin to feel, and we have more diversionary programs than ever. When they see we're trying to give people a second chance, and we're going after everyone with the same fervor and the same sense of justice, then I think it permeates to people that they're trying to be fair to everyone. And this is never even more clear. Since 2010, we, Mr. President, have prosecuted at least 55 police officers for the excessive use of force or for corruption, where my predecessor just a week ago said she didn't prosecute those cases because they had no constituency. I think that's disgusting. The constituency is Philadelphia, the constituency is justice. But it takes more time to investigate those cases. And again, the federal report showed that our office is doing it very well. But we have to double down. And again, the status quo is unacceptable if everybody wants us to do everything they want us to do.
I agree, and I see the collaboration and the effort, and it's not easy to collaborate with all departments all across the board, as what Focused Deterrent does. We believe that the work with the police department, with the DA, with the FBI, with the other utilities, all the things that are involved in DHS and everything else that's involved with this, doesn't make it an easy program, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, so the resources are needed. And this program concentrates on the shoot or be shot person in the community of South Philadelphia, which we have a lot of. And when we're in those communities, there's a need to reach out to those folks, because from what I understand, at least out of the 200 shootings, or out of the whatever number of shootings were in South Philly, 37% of them were at least pinpointed to these two gangs, two groups. And they're the ones that they actually knew of, and not, there's probably more that we didn't correlate to those gangs. So if we get 50% of those shootings happen by these folks, we got to engage these folks. And I think that's what Focus Deterrent does. And the other issue is, how do we engage the people who didn't get to the shot or be shot stage, so they don't go there and end up spending different resources. And we're working with your staff and your office to coordinate people down in South Philadelphia to meet with those community groups to let them do that. And again, that's over and beyond Focus Deterrent, but it just shows you the willingness of the DA's office to step in and do, not the quote prosecution, only prosecution type methods that we have, but actually going in there to help prevent some of these things from happening. And I want to say that I appreciate that as a council person. My district appreciates it, and the community appreciates it. Not that we have to stop doing it. We need to do more. We need to keep the collaboration going. We need to make sure we include the police in all the aspects of that. And the UC Focus Deterrent, I know everybody likes to see this in other areas. Do you see that as a possibility? And obviously that would take even additional resources, so it would make it even harder for you to do.
Look, I'm committed to doing it. It's the right thing to do. It's showing results. But we just can't keep doing everything if we're not funded appropriately. And so don't get me wrong, it goes back to the council president's question earlier. I know Mayor Nutter wants a safer city. I know he cares about lives of people. He doesn't want to see anyone shot. I understand that. But what I can't answer as to why it is that our percentage of the budget is less than what it was in fiscal year 2008. I don't know the answer for that. I don't know what more can be expected of the district attorney's office. I see they've sent the press director over to maybe try to figure this out and spin it better for them. I don't know. I don't know the answer, okay? It just makes no sense as to why that chart showed us receiving the least. And they include, the mayor made in this room, I was here during his budget address, 5-year plan. The DA's office would get an additional 14%, but that included the money that they're giving us for traffic court, which is like an additional job, which I get it. The public deserves a fair traffic court system, and we're going to give it to them. But they want us to keep doing more and more and more, and we can provide even better services, not just lip service. This isn't just lip service. We have the quantifiable results. Don't penalize us for being so good at what we do. Let us continue to do and double down and make the city safer is just my question.
And I'll just end on this, and it seems like sometimes the mentality is that if you're doing well with what you have, let's give you less, and if you're not doing good, we'll give you more money, which is sort of the process that we shouldn't be following. But hopefully in this case, there'll be a reconsideration and we'll be able to get more resources for the district attorney's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. We merely wanted to say thank you. We appreciate the hands-on approach, all the marches through the neighborhood, and all the things we let people, you initiate that let people know we're there and we care about them. But I wanted to just say thank you for all your efforts. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is one of those subjects where it's 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. I remember a while back when the crack epidemic was so pervasive in our community that we wanted to do whatever it took to shut down crack houses that were operating in an open way in every part of the city. We began to kick in gear the forfeiture program, but I'm beginning to wonder if indeed the pendulum has swung a little the other way. There was a class action suit about forfeitures, about the process, and I understand based on testimony that we get about 11 million, maybe 11, between 11, I think it was 17 million out of the process. So here's my questions. What do we get every year from foreclosures? How many properties do we seize? What types of properties do we seize?
All right, so first let me start off by saying that you're correct. The state created the Civil Forfeiture Act as a way for law enforcement to try to take the profit out of the sale of drugs. So that if you were selling drugs out of your car or out of a house and you were arrested because of that, that property could be seized and possibly ultimately sold. And it was very successful in some ways. Nothing's perfect, but it was just another tool to deal with that. And again, I'm sure almost every day the folks that work in your office and that handle constituent services get calls from someone saying there's a crack house, there's a house of ill repute, as my mother would say, or there's a speakeasy on this street, somebody has an after-hour whatever. And you get those calls, we get those calls, the police department gets those calls. So it's not imaginary. It's not like it just doesn't happen, right? And so we have to do something about it because your constituents, our constituents, Philadelphians want fewer crack houses. So we have to make the police go out, try to make arrests, and we try to then do our part. Now, the specific part about what amount comes in, I'm not allowed to talk about that. The Civil Forfeiture Act prohibits the district attorney from talking about those monies because if, in fact, the finance director for the city of Philadelphia knows what that amount is, then they could just say, well, you know what, we're going to defund the district attorney's office. And we don't want there to be a motivation for us to try to take people's houses. That would be unjust. My job is just once there has been arrest or after we've done an investigation, if we see that this property should be taken, to follow the appropriate protocol. And so, you know, I think again, the pendulum swinging was really as a result of me not keeping up with the PR machine that the other side had. By me not talking about the communities that are served and saved by what we do. And so again, we're trying to be as preventive as possible, but we're also trying to change some of our own internal protocols to ensure that there's more checks and balances. You know, some people have a problem that there's no civil Gideon, that people who might have their homes taken don't have the right to have an attorney for free. And so I, Mr. Rowe, State Senator Anthony Hardy Williams, and State Senator Fulmer, we met in Harrisburg to talk about what can they do in Harrisburg to try to ensure that community legal services is better funded. Other methods to give, you know, more checks and balances to help those that might find themselves in that way. But again, a cynic might say that the reason why this whole PR machine went the other way was because whose home got taken that was on the front page of the Daily News in this one case. It was a little bit different than the average person who has their home taken, and it was more sympathetic, a cynic might say, to some people.
So my point is, for every jeer I get about it, I get a lot of cheers about it.
I'm sorry?
For every jeer I get a boo, I get a lot of claps. And so
Right.
it goes both ways is what I'm trying to say. But I do want you to look at how people get notice,
Sure.
how people can have attorneys, because there were a couple of cases, not one, but at least two, that came into my office and said, I didn't know my nephew was in the basement doing what he was doing. Maybe they should have.
Right.
They should check down the basement
Sure.
a little more often.
Right.
But they were in jeopardy, it was a couple, of losing their home.
Right.
And so, and to the credit of those around the corner that did it, they looked into it and they spared them that and told them that if Pookie comes back here,
Or Ray Ray.
or Ray Ray, you know Ray Ray and Pookie hang together, that they would be then forfeit
Sure.
to their home. And I get that. So we need to kind of take a look at the process a bit so that that pendulum doesn't hit people that otherwise would not be run afoul of the law but for them trying to do a solid to a nephew, a niece, a son, or a daughter.
Correct. And I don't disagree with you, Councilman, and I'm going to let Deputy District Attorney Mosey talk to that a little bit greater because he knows more of the details than I am about some of the checks that we're making with the chief of my civil litigation unit, the deputy of our law division are all working together to make sure that we are ensuring those protections. But at the same time, again, you know, to that grandmother, we're not trying just to take the homes of innocent people, okay? But when that grandmother, and let's be a call to, you know, to her, you know, if in fact your grandson has lots of people coming in the basement and he's 14, has no means of income, and he's getting you to flat screen TV,
That happened to,
and the police are coming in, let's just be on notice that it might be that we might have to seize that property. But I want Mr. Mosey to talk a little bit about some of the protocols we're putting in to ensure better process, due process.
So again, I just want you to know, I get the other calls like, how is this 14-year-old paying the gas bill, electric bill, with no visible, it's not newspaper money he's doing it with. And so we have to have some responsibility for those who live in our homes.
So what's really important about what it is that you identified as the way that the case that you were talking about worked was that even though there was the threat of the property being forfeited, it didn't happen. And so it's that impending threat that acts as the deterrence that stops activity that would otherwise persist. If the house wasn't threatened, then even if we did make the arrest, 3 or 4 new people would come in and take their place. The fact is that they should have known. Okay, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt the first time and say, okay, you tell us you didn't know, we'll act upon it as if you didn't know. But now you do. And because they do, and because they know that their house is in jeopardy, they go into action. And I think what we all recognize to be the fact of the matter, those of us who've worked in law enforcement for the number of years that we've worked in law enforcement, that we can't do it alone. We need the support of the people in the community. And with that impending threat, people who otherwise would continue to play dumb, keep their head in the sand, they're more conscious of what's going on, and that certainly helps.
Well, I'd like you to focus a little bit on commercial establishments as well. In some cases, folk are harboring those people who distribute illegal narcotics. In some cases, they are offering stash locations for people who are in that kind of business. And we need to look at them because they constitute more of a nuisance to me than sometimes grandma. And both should be held accountable. And in a lot of cases, some of these small commercial establishments have struck a deal with them. Don't harm me. I won't. You provide me security. I'll provide you safe haven when you need to, and that can't be tolerated either.
Councilman, one thing I'd like to add, you asked me about these numbers. One thing I can say, unlike any of the other 67 counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, in those counties, or like Montgomery County, with the forfeiture funds, the various police departments make application to fund the K-9 team, the bulletproof vest, new equipment, new technologies. In Philadelphia, we have an MOU, 60%. Once we take care of the administrative costs that we share, 60% of all of the funds that come through asset forfeiture go directly to the Philadelphia Police Department.
Final question, since I'm not rung up. Oh, there you go. I like this. Go ahead, take your time. Put the bell on. So, one last question. We decriminalized marijuana. What has been your, and I'll just say some of the unintended consequences I've seen? 7 o'clock every Monday, we do a conference call with all of the schools in my targeted area. I have 30 schools in my district. Some of them are more involved than others, but there's about half dozen of them that are in the same kind of geographic area I mentioned, high crime.
Sure.
And one of the things that one of the school principals has said to me is that young people have misinterpreted this and are starting to boldly come into school with marijuana, saying, well, it's legal, and they don't understand it's decriminalized. They don't understand that does not apply to possession in a school. So have you seen any unintended consequences based on decriminalization?
Well, first I just want to say, as a result of the hard work of the men and women of our juvenile division, we have reduced the number of petitions that we filed from about 10,000 to about 3,000 last year. 10,000 years past, even I think about 6 years ago, to about 3,000 last year. And again, a lot of our work in juvenile remains on crime prevention. But I'll let Deputy District Attorney Mosey explain the aspect of what you just asked.
So the fact that the ordinance also applied to juveniles, I think, created unintended consequences. In the juvenile system in Philadelphia, juveniles weren't being hurt because they were found to be in possession of a small amount of marijuana. Primarily what we wanted to do in those cases was to evaluate the juvenile to make sure that they didn't have a real problem. The marijuana often was an indicator of other problems. What we've lost as a result of the ordinance being in place is the ability to do that. Now, when kids come into school, not only is there no provision for making sure that they are evaluated, that we can check to make sure that this isn't a young person who has other problems, we've also lost the opportunity to make sure that they get the help that they might otherwise need. One of the things about the ordinance is that there's no step-up provision. So if you do it on Monday, you get the penalty. If you do it on Tuesday, it's the same penalty. Do it on Wednesday and Thursday, same thing. So young people can bring marijuana into school with almost impunity, especially with regard to juvenile justice consequences. Now, they may still get kicked out of school. That's up to the school district. But the fact is that all of the help, and you heard Judge Doherty's testimony earlier, the juvenile system is designed to treat, to rehabilitate, and to supervise. We lose that opportunity vis-a-vis the ordinance.
So, listen, we've done things to, everything has its up and its down, and it's unintended and intended consequences. I think decriminalization was a good thing. I do not believe that young people interpreted that in the proper way. Like, we're giving you a chance not to be stigmatized, not to be, for all of your life, excluded from certain opportunities. Some of them have misconstrued this as an opportunity, look what I got, and bringing it into school like show and tell. And so we have to figure this out on the back end on how we step up, as you said, the measures, so that they understand this is not a free pass. So thank you for that. Councilman Squilla, Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that note, during the process, I know, obviously, I voted for support of that bill. Was the DA involved at all with the conversations during the time of the that bill?
Yes. So my first assistant, I believe even Deputy District Attorney George Mosey, we and Greg Rowe, the chief of my legislation unit, worked with then Councilman Kenny on his legislation. Under our rubric is that we really believe that the District Attorneys Association of Pennsylvania, believe that it's really the laws of the Commonwealth, are preeminent when it comes to drugs and guns. We recognized and understood what council's intentions were, and tried to work to mold what we thought was the best legislation of all the possible outcomes, but still did not believe that, we saw it in some ways just as a continuation of the small amounts of marijuana program that we had created, right. Which took defendants that were charged with possessing a de minimis amount, and by Pennsylvania settled law, less than 30 grams is a de minimis amount. That we took those people, and instead of giving them a criminal record, allowed them to pay a fine, to take a class that you kind of took like in 7th grade about the evils of reefer madness, right? Don't do that, the long-term effects. And it was, again, showed a savings to the city. About 10% of all of our misdemeanor cases were these small amounts of marijuana cases. So it made us smarter, it made us leaner and meaner, if you will. It got those people out of the system and paid a fine. So it had some benefit. But we really thought that it's a far cry from legalization, which is a different discussion that has to be made in Harrisburg.
Agree. So now that you guys were involved in the process, and maybe, because we do a lot of things sometimes, there's always unintended consequences to a bill that sometimes we didn't foresee. Now that you see maybe some of the other things that may help, your recommendations for maybe amending that bill or to allow it to do some of the things that you want to do, because even though you were involved, maybe you didn't see this happening. So now that you're still involved and you see maybe an opportunity, is it possible to amend it in a way that would make it easier for you to do what you want to do with some of the younger folks?
Well, I'm going to let Mr. Rowe and Mr. Mosey answer that, because I think they're much more directly associated with it.
Councilman, I would just say this issue, as Councilman Jones says, it not only involves the criminal justice system, it involves schools and social services. So any discussion on a possible amendment would necessarily need to include not just sort of the usual criminal justice players, but the folks who run the schools, who work at the schools, as well as DHS, Dr. Evans, and others, to make sure that if there's going to be any tinkering along the edges, that it's done right and it's done in an evidence-based way. But if that's a discussion that people want us to participate in, absolutely we'll be there. And our recommendation, again, would be to make sure that all the appropriate stakeholders in the different avenues are there to make sure that the improvements work as intended.
And I think that's great. I think the DA should take the lead on that. We appreciate you being able to do that in the future. I would look forward to working with you with your recommendations when you put that task force together to let us know. I think that's a great idea, and we'll look forward to your recommendations on how we could do that. Is there any other thing that you would add?
I think it's important for you to know that the fact that juveniles were included in the ordinance came as a surprise to me, because throughout the discussions, it was my understanding that they would not be included. As I indicated, in Philadelphia's juvenile justice system, juveniles weren't hurt from a legal perspective when they were caught with a small amount of marijuana.
Excuse me, say that again. They were not what?
They were not hurt. The stigma that we talk about, it didn't happen because
there would be no
they would
record
go
for
to
juveniles.
The youth aid panel program, they would get a consent decree. We would do any number of things. The case could be adjusted, but we would have the opportunity to evaluate to make sure that we weren't missing a kid who really needed substance abuse treatment.
Okay, so do we have that? Then you would be willing to do that for us and to give us some information on how you think we could tweak that in a way that would work. And I think for the chair and for the council president, if you could do that, and we could have actually introduce something to amend that to make it better. And because I know, like I said earlier, we introduce legislation all the time, and sometimes there's one thing that we miss that maybe affects something that we didn't see. So in this case, it seems like it did that. And with your input, I think we could fix it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman.
Well, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you, Councilman.
Here he comes. He's coming back. Could the next panel please come to the table? The Law Department.
Thank you, President Clark.
Sit up here. This chair is, you really kept my chair warm. This chair is very. chair's so low. I feel like Edith Van. I feel like Edith Van. I'm only 4.5 years old. I know, these chairs are terrible. I need a phone.
Did you sign on?
In my chair this morning? In my chair this morning? Who? Oh, yeah.
We have to get the chair makers union in here.
It was so low, I felt like Edith Ann from laughing. Now I've dated myself. Good morning.
Good afternoon.
I'm sorry, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Council President Clark and members of City Council. I am City Solicitor Shelley Smith, and with me today are Donna Mosaic, First Deputy City Solicitor, Jane Istvan, the Chair of Litigation, Dan Cantu-Hertzler, the Chair of the Corporate and Tax Units, Division, Frank Paiva, Revenue Chief Counsel, John Hulan, Chief of our Child Welfare Unit, Linda Moore, Chief of Health and Adult Services, and Suki Kazahaya, Director of Administration. We also have a couple of other people here whose issues may come up. I am pleased to have this opportunity to testify in support of the Law Department's FY16 budget request. The FY16 General Fund proposed budget for the Law Department is lower than the FY15 current projection, mainly due to adjustments in contractual and appraisal fees that were made in FY15. Aside from these expenses, the proposed FY16 General Fund proposed budget remains relatively flat. As outlined in the testimony previously submitted, the Law Department achieved several of its target goals in FY15. I would like to take this opportunity to make note of two of the most significant accomplishments of the past year. First, the Law Department significantly stepped up its efforts to increase real estate tax collection for the city and the school district. Filings of real estate tax foreclosures increased from an average of 106 filings per month during the first 6 months of 2009 to an average of 1,075 foreclosures filed per month during the first 7 months of FY15, an increase of over 900%. Additionally, the Law Department worked with the Revenue Department to establish two new innovative tax collection efforts, the Commercial Activity License Revocation Program, or CalRev, and the Sequestration Program. These tools enable the city to collect delinquent taxes faster and with lower resource expenditures than traditional collection litigation. CalRev provides incentives for businesses to pay their delinquency to avoid revocation of their business license. The CalRev program started in fiscal 14 and through January 31st of 2015 has collected approximately $26 million. Sequestration is a strategy by which the city petitions the courts to appoint a receiver to collect rents from tenants to pay the taxes of delinquent rental property owners. The sequestration program was also started in fiscal 14 and through March 31st of 2015 has collected almost $14 million. Second, the Law Department's Child Welfare Unit assisted the Department of Human Services in the implementation of over 20 new amendments to the Child Protective Services Law designed to protect children from abuse. In addition, the unit worked with DHS on the implementation of Improving Outcomes for Children. The premise of this program is to keep children in the community from which they came. Under the Improving Outcomes for Children, cases are assigned by police district and case management is performed by community umbrella agencies that are based in neighborhoods. To further support IO, Law Department attorneys have been very involved in training the agencies on court procedures and best practices for dependency court. In addition to being consistent with the missions of the Law, Revenue, and Department of Human Services departments, respectively, these efforts address Council's desire that we deploy services to support our city's children. I thank you for the opportunity to testify today on the Law Department's fiscal 16 budget request, and I look forward to continuing to work with members of City Council in the performance of my duties as City Solicitor. Should any council member wish to engage in any further discussion on any of these matters, my staff and I are happy to meet at your convenience. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. There appears to be no questions. I want to thank you very much for your testimony. Hold on. Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, thank you for your testimony.
Sure.
I have one question. I know we've been trying to work this out through law and with the school district on using capital dollars for buildings that are school district-owned buildings, how we could get around to do that. Are you familiar with any of that?
I'm not sure I know exactly what you're talking about, so I don't know if it doesn't, the way you've described it, it doesn't sound familiar, but I'm not sure.
All right, there's schoolyards that are looking to get some work done within the Philadelphia School District.
Oh, okay.
And the city had come to us to try to use some of our capital dollars to make improvements in those school districts. And it seems like there's some snag within law that doesn't allow us to use capital dollars within the school district properties.
I'm told that the Budget Office has been presented with this issue before, and the issue is that city capital dollars cannot be used to fund those improvements because the school district buildings are not owned by the city. They're not our buildings. They're not our facilities.
Correct. But is there a way? I mean, we have plenty of smart people there within the law department to find a way where if we have a long-term lease of that area to be able to use capital improvements, to use the resources that we have to help work with the schools to make this happen.
I'm not sure whether that specific question has been presented, but what I'm being told, and we'll have somebody look into it if they have not already.
If you can, for the chair.
Sure.
If we could find a way. I mean, we have a lot of really good people there in the law department and with the school district. I'm sure we could come up with a way to help each other use resources to make it better for not only our students, but for the community surrounding that area.
We're certainly happy to look into it.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
The committee will stand in recess until Tuesday, May 12th, 2015, 10 a.m. in room 400. Thank you.